My goodness. I was like, so, man, I can't tell you sometimes the stuff we are going through in life. Um, but don't worry. Yeah, everything gonna be. It's all right. So, yeah, I was like, so. I didn't even know if I would put the camera, open the camera. I was like, well, I need to get in here and do my work. But any event, I don't know. Something got me to open it. So let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Oh,
Solomon Paul
child.
does not seem to have retained much of the wit which, according to Jewish and Christian panegyrists, had at one time distinguished him. He had probably become very amid the luxurious ease of the episcopal palace or his tract, devoutly Christian as Catholic in tone, is pointless and dull. Another ex-rabbi who devoted himself to attacking Judaism was Juan de Esbania, also called Juan the Old at Toledo, a convert who in old age had embraced Christianity under the influence of Vincent Ferrer's proselytizing efforts. He wrote treatises on his own conversion and the Christian commentary on the 72nd Psalm, in both of which he asserted the genuineness of his change of creed, and urged the Jews to endure their errors. How many weak-minded Jews must have been influenced by the zeal, earnest or hypocritical, of such men as these, belonging to their own race, and marred in their literature. It is impossible to exaggerate the services of the men who, deeply impressed with the gravity of the crisis, threw themselves into the breach, with exhortations to their co-religionists to remain faithful to their creed. In defiance of the dangers which menaced them, they scattered their inspiriting discourses far and wide. Foremost among them were the men who had distinguished themselves at the Tortosa disputation by their unyielding attitude and their courage in withstanding the unjustifiable attacks upon the Talmud on by Al-Farad and Mavi and Joseph Albo. The former drew up in Hebrew 234 a refutation of Geronimo's impeachment of the Talmud Kaddish HaKaddashim, and the latter circulated, in Spanish, an account of a religious controversy he had sustained with an eminent church dignitary. Isaac Ben Kalaninos, of a learned Provenel family named Nathan, who associated a great deal with learned Christians, and frequently had to defend his religious convictions, wrote two polemical works, one entitled Correction of the False Teacher, directed against Geronimo's libelous essay, and the other, called The Fortress, of Unknown Purpose. He also compiled a laborious work of reference intended to assist others in defending Judaism from attack. Isaac Nathan, in his intercourse with Christians, often had to listen to criticisms of Judaism, where evidence is drawn from the Hebrew Bible, in favor of Christian dogmas, which he found were always based on false renderings of Hebrew words. To put an end to these illusory outgrowths of prevailing ignorance of the original text of the scriptures, or, at least, to lighten the labors of his brethren in refuting them, he resolved to compile a comprehensive digest of the linguistic materials of the Bible, by which the actual meaning of each word should be made clear. According to the plan adopted, anyone can ascertain, at a glance, both how often a certain word occurs in the Bible, and its varying meanings according to the contexts. The work thus undertaken by Isaac Nathan was of colossal scope, and occupied a long series of years, September 1437 to 1445. It was a Bible concordance, that is, the verses were grouped alphabetically under the reference words according to root and derivations. The existing Latin concordances served in a measure as models, although their purpose was the less ambitious one of assisting preachers to find texts. Isaac Nathan, who produced various other works, by his concordance rendered an estimable and lasting service to the 235 study of the Bible, although his labor was of a purely mechanical kind. Originating from the temporary needs of the political situation, it has been, and will ever remain, a powerful weapon for ensuring the triumph of Judaism amid struggles with other religious systems. The philosopher, Joseph Ibn Shem Tov, born 1400, died a martyr 1460, who was a voluminous writer, a popular preacher, and a frequenter of the Castilian court, also entered the lists against Christianity to expose the fallacy and unreasonableness of its dogmas. In his frequent intercourse with Christians of distinction, both clerical and lay, he found it necessary to make himself thoroughly acquainted with Christian theology that he might adduce cogent arguments in reply to those who wished to convert him, or in his presence made the oft-reiterated statement of the falsity of Judaism. Occasionally a regular controversy in defense of his creed was forced upon him. The fruits of his studies and thought he committed to writing in the shape of a small treatise, entitled Doubts of the Religion of Jesus, in which he criticized with unsparing logic the dogmas of original sin, salvation, and incarnation. Besides, he wrote, for the instruction of his brethren, a detailed commentary on Prophet Duran's satire on Christianity, and made available for them, by means of a Hebrew translation, Shasta Cresca's polemical work against the Christian religion, originally written in Spanish. Strange to say, the Spanish Jews preferred, as a rule, Hebrew books to those in the language of their adopted country. Among the authors of polemical works against Christianity, a contemporary of Joseph Ibn Shem Tov deserves special mention. History has hitherto forgotten Chaim ibn Musa, from Bidyar, in the neighborhood of Salamanca, born about 1390, died about 1460, a physician, versifier and writer, who 236 had access to the Spanish court and the grantees through his medical skill, and so, frequent opportunities of discussing questions of doctrine with ecclesiastics and learned laymen. A colloquy preserved by Chaim ibn Musa illustrates the spirit which prevailed in Spain before the papal Inquisition silenced all freedom of speech. A learned ecclesiastic once asked Ibn Musa why, if Judaism, as he maintained, was the true faith, the Jews could not possess themselves of the Holy Land in Jerusalem. Ibn Musa replied that they had lost their country through the sins of their fathers, and could only for perfect atonement and purgation. In turn, propounded the question, why are the Christians no longer in possession of the Holy Sepulchre? And why does it, together with all the sites associated with the Passion, continue in the hands of Mohammedan infidels, not to examine that Christians, by means of confession and absolution, and through the medium of the nearest available priest, can free themselves of any remaining sin? Before he was asked to think himself a knight, who had formerly been in Islam, interposed, the Mohammedans are the only people who deserve to possess the sin of the title of the and make our Christians and Jews with so much honor as they. The Christians, during the night before Easter vigils, perpetrate shameful abominations in Jerusalem, abandon themselves to debauchery, harbor thieves and murderers, and carry on bloody feuds within their precincts. They dishonor their character in the same way as the Jews profane their temple. Therefore, God, in His wisdom, has deprived the Jews and the Christians of the holy city, and having passed it to the Mohammedans, they is safe from desecration. The observation of Christian priest and the Jewish physician compose only abashed silence. 237 Shane ibn Musa devoted himself to the task of discrediting the chief sources of the materials of Christian attacks on Judaism, with Francisco Nicholas de Myra. He not only refuted the assertions put forward in those works, but deprived them of the soil upon which they fed. The ever-recurring controversies between Jews and Christians led to no conclusions, and left each party in the belief that it had gained a victory, because they generally turned on secondary questions, the disputants never discussing fundamental premises, but wrangling, each from his undemonstrated basis. Shane ibn Musa wished to introduce method into these controversies, and to lay down clear principles for the defense of Judaism. Accordingly, he drew up rules which, strictly observed, were found to lead to technical power. In the first place, he advised Jews very to avoid interpretation of the single meaning of the scriptures, always to take context into account, and especially to avoid controversial arguments and interpretation, which led Christians to arbitrary theories. Further, Jewish disputants were to announce that they ascribed no authority in matters of belief either to the Chaldaic translation of the Bible or to the Greek Septuagint, these being the verses that all authorized by Christians. He counseled them to abandon even Maggadic exegesis, and not to hesitate to declare that it had no weight in determining the doctrines of Judaism. These insinuations changed the initial writings of Nicholas de Myra, successfully refuting them from beginning to end in a comprehensive work, justly entitled Shield and Steward. The anti-Christian political version of this period was further enriched by two writers, Saladin, living in Algiers, or removed from the scenes of the Christian propaganda. By Simon 238, Benzim Duran and his son, Solomon Duran, were Spaniards by birth and education. In his philosophical position of Judaism, former devoted chapters of Christianity, and came, in answer to Christian and Mohammedan objections, the inviolability of the Torah. This chapter, entitled Law and Butler, and described the against and attack, proves the contention of older writers, and more recently of Prophet Duran, that Jesus' intention was not to abolish Judaism. The rabbi of Algiers exhibits extraordinarily wide acquaintance with the literature of the New Testament and broad familiarity with church doctrine, combats each with weapons taken from its own arsenal, and criticizes unsparingly. Solomon Duran, born about 1400, died 1467, who succeeded his father in the Algerian rabbinate, combined with profound Talmudic knowledge of decided leaning towards a rationalistic apprehension of Judaism. Unlike his father and his ancestor, Maimonides, he was a strong enemy of the Talmud. During his father's lifetime and at his request, he wrote a refutation of the shameless, lying accusations brought against the Talmud by Geronimo de Santa Fe. In an exhaustive treatise thereon the conflict of duties, he deals sharply with Geronimo's sallies. He repels the accusation that the Talmud teaches rudeness, and proves that it really inculcates extreme consequence. Jews who regulate their lives according to Talmudic traditions say holding them in belief by Christ, and defending this by a person guilty of it. How, asked Solomon Duran, have Christians or French Jews who contrast self-made, these holiest mandate commit sins which dare not be mentioned in modest news, and which have become proverbial as monks in the day God. Which has been raised to a new perfection of science and had its last cultivators in Spain during this period. The same men who protected Judaism against the onslaughts of Christianity defended it against benighted Jews who wished to abandon it, and, like the Dominicans, desired to establish blind faith in the place of reason and judgment. Zealots like Shem Tov and Shem biased by their narrow Talmudic understanding, and misled by Kabbalah, saw in scientific inquiry a byroad to heresy. Perceiving that for the most part cultivated Jews succumbed to the proselytizing efforts of Vincent Ferrer and Pope Benedict, men of the stamp of Shem Tov were confirmed in their belief that philosophic culture, nay, reflection on a religious topic, irretrievably lead to apostasy. The logical result of religious impeachment of science was the condemnation of Maimonides and all the Jewish thinkers who had allowed reason to have weight in religious questions. Against this form of bigotry, Joseph Albo entered the lists with a complete religio-philosophical work on fundamental teachings, in which he attempted to separate the essential doctrines of Judaism from the non-essential, and to fix the boundary line between belief and heresy. Joseph Albo, born about 1380, died about 1444, of Marro, one of the principal representatives of Judaism at the Totosa disputation, who, probably through the intolerance of Pope Benedict, had emigrated to Soria, was a physician and a pupil of Chasta Crescas, hence well acquainted with the physical sciences and the philosophic thought of his time. Although a strict adherent of Talmudical Judaism, he was, like his teacher, not averse to philosophic ideas. Indeed, he tried to reconcile them, without, of course, permitting Judaism to yield its jaw to philosophy. Albo had not, however, the profundity of his teacher. As a thinker, he was 240 commonplace, and incapable of writing with logical sequence. On the advice of his friends, he undertook to investigate how far freedom of inquiry in religious matters was possible within the limits of Judaism. At the same time, he wished to fix the number of articles of faith and to decide the question whether the number 13 adopted by Maimonides was correct, or whether it could be increased or lessened without justly bringing a charge of heresy on him who made the change. Thus originated his religio-philosophical system, the last on Spanish soil. Albo's his predecessors. He was a preacher near the cleverest and most graceful, and he, this circumstance exercised marked influence on his method of exposition. It is easy, comprehensible, popular, and spontaneous. Albo has the knack of explaining every philosophic idea by a striking illustration, and understanding the principle of the Bible verses and God's arguments. With this style of, on the one hand, in intelligibility and popularity, it lost, on the other, certain strengths and shallowness. It is a remarkable fact that Albo, who thought that he was developing his religio-philosophical system exclusively in the native spirit of Judaism, placed at its head a principle of individually Christian origin. So powerfully do surroundings affect even those who exert themselves with the laws of influence. The religious laws of absolute fundamental Judaism strongly emphasizes this aspect of religion. His teacher, Chasticus, and others had considered man's aim because of the future life to be found in proximity to the deity and in the union of the soul with the all-pervading spirit of God. According to Malvo, highest happiness consists not so much in the exaltation of the soul as in its salvation. Everything that makes Malvo really be a good part of the system, but no perfection is only after death, perfection possessing God. There are three kinds of institutions for the reformation of man from barbaric to civilization. The first is natural law, a sort of social compact to abstain from theft, rapine, and homicide. The second is state legislation, which cares for order and morals. And the third is philosophical law, which aims at promoting the enduring happiness of man, or, at least, at removing obstacles in the way of its realization. All these institutions, even when highly developed, are powerless to assist the free will of man, the redemption of his soul, his beatitude. For they concern themselves only with actions, with proper conduct, but do nothing to inculcate the use or supply the principles which are to be the mainsprings of action. If the highest aim of man be eternal life or beatitude after death, then there must be a divine legislation, without which man in this world must always be groping in darkness and missing his highest destiny. This divine legislation must supply all the perfections lacking in its mundane counterpart. It must have the posture of the perfect God, who both wishes and is able to promote the will of man. It must fill every weakness to a certain God has revealed the unalterable possibilities of the happiness of man. Finally, it must appoint a suitable fight for action against sin. Hence, this divine legislation must be fundamental principles, the existence of God, the revelation of his will, and just retribution after death. According to Malvo, it's a discipline for eternal salvation. It is the divine legislation to Elohim, and, as such, it comprises many religious laws pertaining according to the customary population of its people to enable each individual to have his own salvation. For even a single religious precept fulfilled with intelligence and devotion, and without mental reservation or ulterior motive, entitles man to salvation. Consequently, the Torah, with its numerous prescriptions, is not intended as a burden for its disciples, nor are the Jews threatened, as Christian teachers maintain, with the curse of the event under not observing the entire number of commandments. On the contrary, the object is to render easy the path to higher perfection. Therefore, the Agadah says that every Israelite has a share in eternal life on Kafah, for each one can obtain this end by the fulfillment of a single religious duty. Arrived at this point, the religious philosopher of Syria propounds the question whether Judaism can ever be altered as previous dispensations were by this native revelation. This question required specially careful consideration, as Christians always maintain that Christianity was a new revelation, as Judaism had been in its time. That the new covenant took the place of the old, and that by the gospel, the word had been fulfilled, i.e., abrogated. Malvo had acknowledged the existence of rudimentary revelations previous to that of Sinai, and to avoid being entrapped by the consequences of his own system he put forward a peculiar distinction. That which God had been direct to man was, exact, unalterable and binding for all time. But that which had been communicated only by a prophetic intermediary might suffer change or even annulment. The Ten Commandments which the Israelites had received direct from God, amid the flames of Sinai, were unalterable. In them the three cardinal principles of the divine legislation are laid down. On the other hand, the remaining prescriptions of Judaism, imposed on the people solely through the mediation of Moses, were open to change or even revocation 243, but this instability of a portion, perhaps a large portion, of the Jewish religious law was only a theory, propounded simply as a possibility. In practice, the obligations of the Torah were to be regarded as binding and unalterable, until it should please God to reveal other laws through the medium of a prophet as great as Moses, and in as open and convincing a manner as on Sinai. Hitherto no prophet had made good his claim so far as to render necessary the rescinding of any portion of Judaism. Malvo's religious system is far from satisfactory. Based upon the Christian doctrine of salvation, it was compelled to regard faith, in a Christian sense, as the chief condition of the soul's redemption, and the ordinances of Judaism as sacraments, similar to baptism or communion, upon which salvation was dependent. Nor is the development of his theory strictly logical. Too often the arts of the preacher take the place of severe reasoning, and for the illustration of his ideas he indulges in prolix sermons and exposition of biblical and gathered texts. A bolder thinker than Malvo, but, like him, a preacher, was his junior contemporary, Joseph Ibn Shem Tov. At one time, when in disgrace with the king of Castile, and leading a wandering life, he held forth every Sabbath to large audiences. He had been well schooled in philosophy. His Kabbalistical, gloomy and fanatical father, who denounced philosophy as a primary source of evil, damned Aristotle to hell, and even accused Maimuni of heterodoxy, must have been scandalized when his son Joseph plunged deep, and with all his heart, into the study of Aristotle and Maimuni. But Joseph did not hesitate to stigmatize the error of his father and of those who thought the employment of philosophic methods opposed to the interests of religion. He, on the contrary, held that they were essential for the attainment of the higher destiny to which all men, especially Israelites, are called. A culture, philosophical 244 who intelligently discharges all the religious duties of Judaism obviously realizes his high aim much sooner than the Israelite who practices his ceremonial blindly, without wisdom or understanding. Science is also of great value in enabling human intelligence to discriminate error. It is the nature of man's imperfect intellect to foster truth and error side by side. Knowledge teaches how to distinguish between the true and the false. On the other hand, gaps in philosophical teaching are bridged over by the Sinaitic law. Insofar as the latter conceives the happiness of man in the survival of the spirit after the destruction of the body, it is immeasurably the superior of philosophy. Judaism also names the means of attaining eternal happiness he conscientious fulfillment of religious obligations. On this point, Joseph Shem Tov emphasizes also, the commandments of Judaism have a sacramental character, but he does not emphasize salvation so much as Aldo. Joseph Ibn Shem Tov went so far, however, as to deny that the objects of the religious laws were knowable, and, to a certain extent, ascribed to them a mystical influence. None of these claims are satisfactory or refer to leisure and unfitting spirit. All were stimulated to existence of the and no report to protect religious and moral pleasure held from personal danger. In order not to succumb, Judaism was forced simultaneously to strengthen itself in movement and toward opposites and thought. As it was, more than ever necessary for Judaism to bring the mocking Hussites back to the bosom of the Mother Church, despaired of putting an end to the dissolute and vice of the clergy and monks, and gave its attention to Jews to lead them to salvation. Led by sheep themselves, they sought to save unblemished lands. The Basel Church Council, which sat for 14 June 1443, gave no small share of its attention to the Jews. Their humiliation was necessary for the strengthening of Christian faith, which was the ground on which the council proceeded on its 19th since September 17th, and involved remarkably open to as new restrictions. Not only Christians from the community the Jews, from rendering them services, excluding them from offices and dignities, imposing on them a distinct part, and ordering them to live in special due conduct. Fresh measures were adopted, new insofar as they had not previously been put forward by the highest ecclesiastical authorities. These provided that Jews should not be admitted to university degrees, that they should be made, if necessary, by force, to attend the delivery of conversionist sermons, and that all his means should be provided for the Roman Church Council Charlie, and Mary. Thus the Ecumenical Council, which gave itself out as inspired by the Holy Ghost, designed to make all Jews. Johnson, 246 Pablo Cristiani, and Vincent Ferrer, who had counseled systematic application of pressure to induce the Jews to abandon their infidelity. Jews, too, the Basel Church Council bestowed special attention. They were to be favored, but also carefully watched, lest they marry Jews, keep some of Jewish feasts, and marry their according to Jewish rites, or, in fact, follow the Jewish observances.
Oh, you're mad now.
Bro.
You squad dropping that stuff.
And both gave a willing ear to the rumor that the Jews, during Holy Week, had crucified the merced servant of a Jew, and put him to the sword. The reputed martyr was still living, but, nevertheless, Bishop Bill Nudge was caused 2 Jews to be imprisoned as ringleaders. Thereafter arose a contest between the bishop and the governor, Juan Deslar. The latter maintained that as the Jews were the property of the king, he alone could condemn them. The bishop was obliged to hand over the Jews, who were locked up in the governor's jail. The priests, however, incited the mob against the governor and the Jews, and before Juan Deslar could arrange for a hearing, the people were repossessed against him. A court composed chiefly of Dominicans and Franciscans was called together, and employed the rack as the most effectual means of obtaining the truth from the witnesses. One of the accused put to the torture acknowledged all that was desired, and pointed out any Jews who happened to be mentioned as his accomplices. An unprincipled Jew named Asterix Sidili, who lived in strife with many members of the community, and feared to be involved in the blood accusation, came forward as the denouncer of his co-religionists. Apparently of his own accord, Asterix Sidili acknowledged that the servant had 247 been crucified, and pointed out several Jews as the murderers. Although he kept himself clear from all complicity in the matter, Asterix Sidili was soon punished for his denunciations. He was thrown into prison as an accomplice. The fate of the informer and the flight of several Jewish families, justly fearing a repetition of massacres, from Palma to a mountain in the vicinity, excited the Christian inhabitants yet more. The fugitives who were pursued, placed in fetters, and brought back to the city, their flight being considered a proof of the guilt of the entire community. Asterix Sidili and 3 others were condemned to be burnt at the stake, but their punishment was commuted to death by hanging, on condition that they be baptized. To this they agreed, baptism the last straw by which the law was considered. The whole community, men, women and children, 200 in all, went over to Christianity to escape a horrible death. The priests had ample employment in baptizing the converts. How little they believed in the imputed crime of the condemned was shown when, the gallows being raised, the priests, encouraging the mob to do the same, demanded the pardon of the condemned. The governor yielded to the voice of the people, and by a procession and amid singing they were escorted to the church, where a Te-Deum was chanted. Thus ended the community of Majorca, which had lasted over 1,000 years, and had greatly contributed to the well-being of the island. Would have disappeared the prosperity of this fruitful and favored island. Simon Duran, deeply grieved at the succession of the community of Palma, which he had lovingly cherished, silenced his conscience with the thought that he had not been amiss in exhortation. 248. Chapter 8. Capistrano and his persecution of the Jews. Pope Eugenius IV, under the influence of Alfonso de Cartagena, changes his attitude towards the Jews as well against the Spanish and Italian Jews in 1442 on 1 second defending the Jews of the relation to Judaism. One of Capistrano's influence with the people is turned against the Jews. Capistrano in Bavaria and W.'s expulsion of the Berlin community, expulsion of the Jews from Biarritz and Wolsey, Jews of Poland under Casimir IV, capture of Constantinople by Muhammad II. Jews find an asylum in Turkey. He creates Oses Capsalis Saxarafati opposition of the Jews in Spain. Persecutions directed by Alfonso de Spina. He condition of the marauders. 1442 to 1478 CE. About the middle of the 15th century, tremendous hatred of Jews, and characteristic of Spain and Germany, began to increase, and that people simply reached its highest development. In Spain were stimulated principally by envy of the influential position still enjoyed by Jews in spite of misfortune and humiliation. In Germany, on the contrary, there the Jews moved like shadows. It rose from great race antipathy, of which religious differences formed one aspect. An unfortunate event for the German communities was the death of Emperor Sigismund towards the end of 1437, at the moment when the Council of Basel was casting a threatening glance in their direction. This prince was not a reliable protector of the Jews. Often enough he led them to relieve his ever-recurring pecuniary embarrassments, and he even charged them with the expenses of the Council of Constance. But so far lay in his power he set his face against the bloody persecutions of his Hebrew subjects. He was succeeded as German king and emperor in 249 by the Austrian Archduke Albert, who had already distinguished himself by inhumanity towards Jews. Albert II was a deadly enemy of Jews and heretics. He could not exterminate either, for the Hussites had courage and arms, and the Jews were an indispensable source of money. But whenever it was sought to remove them, he gladly assisted. When the town council of Augsburg decided to expel the Jewish community in 1449, the emperor agreed with the 2 years were granted them to dispose of their houses and immovables. At the end of that time they were one and all exiled, and the gravestones in the Jewish cemetery used to repair the city walls. Fortunately for the Jews, Albert reigned only 2 years, and the rule of the Holy Roman Empire, or rather the anarchy by which it was convulsed, devolved on a good-natured, weak, indolent, and tractable Frederick III, as it set off. 2 fanatical Jew haters now arose: Eugenius IV and the Franciscan, John of Capistrano, the cutthroat in the guise of a lowly servant of God. Eugenius, whom the council of Basel had degraded step by step, depriving him of his dignities and electing another pope in his place, ultimately trying to figure out some of the members of the council and the helplessness of the German countries, and just was able to pull the Christian movement. Eugenius, though of narrow, monkish views, was at first not unfavorably disposed towards the Jews. At the beginning of his pontificate, he confirmed the privileges granted Jews by his predecessor, Martin V, caused them his protection, and produced their forcible baptism. But he was soon influenced in an opposite direction, and developed extraordinary zeal in degrading the Jews and withdrawing all protection from them. The prime mover in this conversion seems to have been Alfonso de Cartagena, the son of the apostate Paul de Santa 250 Maria. Appointed Bishop of Burgos on the death of his father, Alfonso warmly espoused the cause of Pope Eugenius at the Council of Basel, and hence rose high in the favor of the pontiff. He alone could have been the author of the complaints against the power and arrogance of the Castilian Jews which induced the Pope's issue rule of 1442. This document was addressed to the bishops of Castile and Leon in August 1492, when they come to the knowledge of the slogan that Jews abuse the privileges granted them by former popes, blasphemy and transgress into the vexation of the faithful in the dishonor of the true faith. He felt himself compelled, therefore, to withdraw the indulgences granted by his predecessors Art and other popes and he to declare them not. At the same time he tried to ease canonical restrictions in a several form. Thus, he decreed that Christians should not eat, drink, bathe, or live with Jews or Mohammedans, nor use medicines or any kind purveyed by them. Jews and Mohammedans should not be eligible for any office or dignity, and should be incompetent to inherit property from Christians. They were to build no more synagogues, and, in repairing the old, were to avoid all ornamentation. They were to seclude themselves from the public eye during Passion Week, to the extent even of keeping their doors and windows closed. The testimony of Jews and Mohammedans against Christians was declared invalid. Eugenius will emphatically enjoined that no Christian should stand in any relation of servitude to a Jew, and should not even kindle a fire for him on the Sabbath. That Jews should be distinguished from Christians by peculiar costume, and reside in special quarters. Furthermore, every blasphemous utterance by a Jew about Jesus, the Mother of God, or the saints, was to be severely punished by the civil tribunals. This bull was ordered to be made 251 known throughout the land, and put in force the same day. Heavy penalties were to be exacted for offenses under it. If the culprit was a Christian, he was to be placed under the ban of the church, and neither king nor queen was to be exempt. If a Jew, then the whole of his fortune, personal and real, was to be confiscated by the bishop of the diocese, and applied to the purposes of the church. By means of circular letters, Eugenius exhorted the Castilian ecclesiastics to enforce the restrictions without mercy. He dared not be outdone in Jew hatred by the Council of Basel. At about the same time, or perhaps earlier, Eugenius issued a bull of 42 articles against the Italian Jewish communities, in which, among other things, he ordered that, under pain of confiscation of property, Jews should not read Talmudic literature. The papal bull for Castile was proclaimed in many of the towns, as it would appear, without the consent of the king. 1 second the fanatics had won the day. All their wishes were fulfilled. The misguided people at once considered Jews and Mohammedans outlawed, and proceeded to make violent attacks on their persons and property. Pious Christians interpreted the papal ordinances to mean that they were not to continue commercial relations of any kind with the Jews. Christian shepherds forthwith abandoned the flocks and herds committed to their charge by Jews and Mohammedans, and found in turn their backs upon the fields. Reunion of Tom command that frame and statue to promote complete oppression of the prescribed of the church. In consternation the Jews appealed to the king of Castile. They were defense of the North and their damage and advantage to the royal institution. 1 second, holy governors he expressed his indignation at the shamelessness which made the papal 252 an excuse for assaults on the Jews and Mohammedans. Canonical, royal and imperial law agreed in permitting them to live undisturbed and unmolested among Christians. The bull of Pope Eugenius placed Jews and Mohammedans under certain specific restrictions. But it did not follow that they might be robbed, that they might not engage in trade or industry, nor work as weavers, goldsmiths, carpenters, barbers, shoemakers, tailors, millers, coppersmiths, saddlers, rosemakers, potters, cartwrights or basket makers, or that Christians might not serve them in these pursuits. Such service involved neither relaxation of Christian authority nor dangerous intimacy with the Jews. Nor did it appear that the avocations mentioned conferred any of that prestige which slavery was designed to grant to Jews. Christians should certainly abstain from the medicines of Jewish or Moorish physicians, as inclined by Christian names. This did not mean that skillful doctors of the Jewish or the Mohammedan faith should not be consulted, or their medicines not used, for no Christian physician was available. 1 second imposed upon the magistracy the duty of safeguarding the Jews and Mohammedans, as objects of his special protection, and instructed them to punish Christian offenders with imprisonment and confiscation of goods. He furthermore ordered that his pleasure be made known throughout the land by public criers, in the presence of a notary. Whether this sophistical decree was of any real use to the Jews is doubtful. Don Juan II had not much authority in his kingdom, and was obliged to make frequent concessions to hostile parties, with whom his own son occasionally made common cause. The Castilian Jews were consequently abandoned to the arbitrary authority of the local magistrates during the remainder of the reign of this well-meaning but weak monarch, and were obliged 253 to come to terms with them whenever protection was required against violence or false accusations. If any misfortune threatened the Jew, then the tailor would fly to his princely patron, or the goldsmith to a grantee of high position, and seek to avert it by supplications or gold. It was truly no enviable situation in which the Jews found themselves. Eugenius' successor, Pope Nicholas V. March 1447-1455, continued the system of degrading and oppressing the Jews. As soon as he ascended the throne of St. Peter, he devoted himself to abolishing the privileges of the Italian Jews, which Martin V had confirmed and Eugenius had not formally revoked, and subjecting them to exceptional laws. In a vote, dated June 23rd, 1447, he repealed verbally the restrictions which his predecessor had formulated for Castile, reenacting them in the fullest detail, not even omitting the prohibition against lighting of fires with Jews on the Sabbath. But their Nicholas bull was only a copy. It had much more real force than the original. For its execution was confided to the Colonels June Peter and Count of Penter, John of Capistrano. On him devolved the duty of seeing, he ran personally to his brother Franciscus, that the provisions of the bull were literally obeyed, and infractions strictly punished. If, for example, a Jewish physician provided a suffering Christian with the means of regaining health, Capistrano was authorized to confiscate the whole of the offender's fortune and property. And the saintly monk, with heart of stone, was just the man to visit such a transgression with unrelenting severity. The Council of Basel and imposed strict detention over a wide area. The fierce and bigoted Bavarian Duke of Landshut, Louis the Ridger, hunter of game and Jews, had all the Jews of his country arrested on one day Monday, October 5, 1450, shortly after his accession 254 to power. The men were thrown into prison, the women shut up in the synagogues, and their property and jewelry confiscated. Christian debtors were directed not to pay their Jewish creditors more than the capital they had originally borrowed, and to deduct from it the interest already paid. After 4 weeks of incarceration, the unhappy Jews were obliged to purchase their lives from the turbulent Duke for 30,000 gulden, and then, penniless and almost naked, they were turned out of the country. Gladly would Louis have meted out the same treatment to the large and rich community of Ratisbon, which was within his jurisdiction. As, however, his authority was recognized only to a limited extent, and as the Jews of the city were under the protection of the council and its privileges, he was obliged to content himself with levying contributions. Many Jews are said to have been driven by anxiety and want into embracing Christianity. As the rest of the European Jews regarded their Spanish brethren as an exalted and favored class, Louis directed special attention to them and to their favorable position in the state. Either on the proposition of the king to modify the severe canonical restrictions against Jews, or on the petition of their enemies to confirm them, Pope Nicholas V issued a new bull March 1, 1451. He confirmed the old exclusions from Christian society and all honorable walks of life, and entirely abolished the privileges of the Spanish and the Italian Jews. The unclean canonical legislation against the children of Israel was unconsciously based on fear. All powerful Christians were ready to exert on the Christian population in too familiar intercourse. What the papacy concealed in the incense clouds of its official decrees was disclosed by a philosophical writer and cardinal standing in close relation with the 255 papal court. Nicholas de Cusa from Cusa on the Moselle, the last devotee of scholasticism, into which he tried to introduce mystic elements, enthusiastically antiquated, in the face of the dissensions of Christendom, the union of all religions in one frame. Church ceremonies he was prepared to sacrifice. Nay, he was ready to accept circumcision, if, by such means, non-Christians could be won over to the belief in the Trinity. He feared, as he distinctly said, the stiff-neckedness of the Jews, who cleave so stubbornly to their body faith. But he consoled himself in the reflection that an unarmed foe could not disturb the peace of the world. It is true, the Jews were unarmed. But, mentally, they were still powerful, and Nicholas resolved to devote himself to the task of depriving them of intellectual strength. The Pope had appointed him legate for Germany, where he was to reform church and collect the But the cardinal also occupied himself with the Jewish question. At the provincial council of Hamburg he put into force the canonical statute concerning Jew badges, which provided that men should wear round pieces of red cloth on their breasts, and women blue stripes on their head dresses as if the branding of Jews could heal the dissolute clergy and their demoralized flocks of their uncleanness. The only result of the isolation of the was the protection from the taint of prevailing immorality. The cardinal was not successful in purifying the clergy, or in putting an end to the thought of living the and miracle working images, and which had extended so long. There would have been abundant cause to fear the Jews, if they had been permitted to probe the subterranean world. Especially if the church were found in the Jews and state, which became driven into its worldwide massacres, pulpit denunciations, 256 illegal restrictions to which their race was exposed. Not only the laymen Christians, but also those who had taken over the suit and most part, continued to extend more or less openly to religious laws. The sophistry of the conquest, and the sanctuary of Israel and the sanctified, the burden of testimony, the Testament of the Talmud about the Messiah of Jesus, in spite of baptism, they remained stiff-necked and blind. True to the faith of their fathers. Don Juan of Castile, at the instigation of his favorite, Alvaro de Luna, who was anxious to strike at his arch enemies, the New Christians, complained to Pope Nicholas V of the relapses of the Moranos, and Cardiff knew of no remedy but force. He addressed rescripts to the Bishop of Osma and the Vicar of Salamanca November 20, 1451, empowering them to appoint inquisitors to inquire judicially into cases of the Christians suspected of faith. The inquisitors were authorized to punish the convicted, imprison them, confiscate their goods and disgrace them, to degrade the priests, and hand them over to the secular armed church unit, condemning them to the terrible state. This was the first spark of the hellfire of the Inquisition, which perpetrated more inhumanity than all the tyrants and malpractices started by history. First, this bull seems to have been invented. The times were not ripe for the very institution. Besides, the Christians themselves held to keep up the connection of the baptized Jews with their brethren in grace. They denied equal rights to new Christians of Jewish or Mohammedan origin, and wished to exclude them from all posts of honor. As they extended, ignorant of the diversity of natural elements, the Pope was compelled to issue a bull November 29, 1451, 257 was powerless in the Christians. Continued driving such proselytes into the church. Yet this was done by the Franciscan monk, John of Capistrano of Neapolitan, who was responsible for immense injury to the Jews of many deaths. This mendicant friar, a conspirator and low-favored appearance, possessed open influence and power and will, which enables him to obtain unbounded influence, not only over the stupid populace, but also over the cultivated classes. With a word he could fascinate, inspire, or terrify, persuade to piety or incite to cruelty. Vincent Ferrer. Capistrano's power lay not so much in his captivating eloquence as in the sympathetic modulations of his voice and the unshakable enthusiasm with which he clung to his mistaken convictions. He himself firmly believed that, with the blood he had gathered from the hands of his master, Bernardo Sina, and his profession, he could cure the sick, awake the dead and perform all kinds of miracles, and the misguided people not only believed but exaggerated his professions. His strictly ascetic life, his hatred of good living, luxury and debauchery, made an impression deeper from its striking contrast to the sensuality and dissoluteness of the great bulk of the clergy and monks. Wherever Capistrano appeared, the people thronged by thousands to hear him, to be edified and agitated, even though they did not understand a syllable of his Latin addresses. These two popes, Eugenius IV and Nicholas V, recognized in his assertive convincing the restoration of the power and authority of St. Peter. They rejoiced in his homilies on the infallibility of Jesus when he violently rose on the exaltation of Herodes, and the the 258 necessity of withstanding the victoriously advancing Turks. They offered no objection if, at the same time, he thought proper to vent his own dishwall upon harmless amusements, pastimes and the elegancies of life, seeing that they themselves were not disturbed in their enjoyments and pleasures. Among the standing themes of Capistrano's exciting discourses upon owing to his rancor against heretics and Turks, and his tirades against luxury and sports are his denunciations of the impieties and the usury of Jews. This procured his appointment by Pope Nicholas to the post of Inquisitor of the Jews, his duty being to superintend the enforcement of the canonical restrictions against them. He had in Naples occupied the position of inquisitorial judge for the Jews, on the nomination of Queen Joanna, who had empowered him to punish with the severest penalties any failure to observe the ecclesiastical law or wear the Jew badge. When this infuriate Kotkukin visited Germany, he spread terror and dismay among the Jews. They trembled at the mention of his name. In Bavaria, Silesia, Moravia, and Austria, the bigotry of the Catholics, already at a high pitch on account of the Hussite schism, was further stirred by Capistrano, and, the Bohemian heretics being beyond its reach, it vented itself upon Jews. The Bavarian dukes, Louis and Albert, who had on one occasion before driven the Jews out of their territories, were made still more fanatical by Capistrano. The Pano demanded of certain houses, and of the city of Radisson, that they expel the Jews. The burgomaster and town council, however, refused, and would not withdraw the protection and the rights of citizenship which the Jews had enjoyed from an early period. But they could not shield them from the hostility of the clergy. Eventually even the Radisson burghers, despite their goodwill for their Jewish fellow citizens, fell under the influence of Capistrano's 259 fanaticism, and allowed themselves to be incited to acts of unfriendliness. In the midwife regulations, promulgated during the same year, occurs a clause prohibiting Christian midwives from attending Jewish women, even in cases where the lives of the patients were at stake. The change of public feeling in respect to the Jews, brought about by Capistrano, is strikingly illustrated by the conduct of one eminent ecclesiastic before and after the appearance of the Kotkukin in Germany. Bishop Gottfried, of Wiersberg, reigning Duke of Franconia, shortly after his accession to the governance of the duchy, had granted the fullest privileges to the Jews. More favorable treatment they could not have desired. For himself and his successors he promised special protection to all within his dominions, both to those settled and those who might settle there later. They were to be freed from the authority of the ordinary tribunals, lay and ecclesiastical, and to have their disputes inquired into and adjudicated by their own courts. Their Rabbi Hoffmeister was to be exempt from passes, and to be allowed to receive pupils in his yeshiva at his discretion. Their movements were to be unrestricted, and those who might desire to change their place of residence were to be assisted to collect their debts, and provided with safe conduct on their journeys. It was further promised that these privileges should never be modified or revoked, and the dean and chapter unanimously recognized and guaranteed them for themselves and their successors in the chapter. Every Jew who took up his abode within Bishop Godfrey's jurisdiction was provided with special letters of protection. But after Capistrano had begun their agitation, how different the attitude towards Jews. We soon find the same Bishop and Duke of Franconia issuing, on account of the grievous complaints against the Jews in his diocese, a statute and ordinance 1453, decreeing to succeed their banishment. They were allowed until the 18th January of the following year to sell their immovables, and within 14 days after that date, they were to leave, for he the bishop would no longer tolerate Jews in his diocese, or town, and justices were enjoined to expel the Jews from their several jurisdictions, and Jewish creditors were deprived of a portion of the debts owing to them. When Jews were concerned, inhuman fanaticism could beguile a noble hearted prince of the church and an entire chapter of ecclesiastics into a flagrant breach of faith. Capistrano's influence was most mischievous for the Jews of Silesia. Here he showed himself in truth to be the scourge of the Jews, as his admirers called him. The two chief communities in this province, which belonged half to Poland and half to Bohemia, were at Brla and Schweidnitz, and the Jews composing them, not being permitted to possess real property, and being, besides, largely engaged in the money traffic, had considerable amounts of money at their command. The majority of the nobles were among their debtors, and several towns were either themselves debtors or had become security for their princes. Hence it is not unlikely that some debtors of rank secretly planned to evade their liabilities by ridding themselves of the Jews. At any rate, the advent of the fanatical princess afforded an opportunity for carrying out such a design. Capistrano came to the Silesian capital on the invitation of the Bishop of Brla, Peter Novak, who found himself unable to control his subordinate ecclesiastics. Summoning the clergy to his presence, the Franciscan preacher upbraided them for their sinful, immoral, and sensual lives. The doors of the church in which the interview took place were securely bolted, so that no later might learn the full extent of the depravity of the ministers of the 261 Gospel. But nearer to his heart than the reclamation of the clergy was the extermination of the Hussites, of whom there were many in Silesia, and the persecution of the Jews. The frenzied fanaticism with which Capistrano's writings inspired the people of Brla directed itself principally against the Jews. A report was spread that a Jew named Meyer, one of the wealthiest of the Brla Israelites, in whose safekeeping were many of the bonds of the burghers and nobles, had purchased a host from a peasant, had stabbed and blasphemed it, and then distributed its fragments among the communities of Schweidnitz, Liegnitz, and others for further desecration. It need hardly be said that the wounded host was alleged to have shed blood. This imbecile fiction soon reached the ears of the municipal authorities, with whom it found ready credence. Fourth of all the Jews of Brla, men, women and children, were thrown into prison, their entire property in the Jute and Goss seized, and, what was most important to the authors of the catastrophe, the bonds of their debtors, worth about 25,000 Hungarian gold florins, confiscated 2 May, 1453. The guilt of the Jews was rendered more credible by the flight of a few of them, who were, however, soon taken. Capistrano assumed the direction of the inquiry into this important affair. As inquisitor, the leading voice in the prosecution of blasphemers of a consecrated wafer by right belonged to him. He ordered a few Jews to be stretched on the rack, and personally instructed the torturers in their task he had experience in such work. The tortured Israelites confessed. Meantime, another infamous lie was circulated. A wicked baptized Jewess declared that the Brla Jews had once before burned a host, and that, on another occasion, they had kidnapped a Christian boy, fattened him, and put him into a cask studded with sharp nails, which they rolled about until their victim 262 gave up the ghost. His blood had been distributed among the Silesian communities. Even the bones of the murdered child were alleged to have been found. The guilt of the Jews appeared established in these various cases, and a large number, in all 318 persons, were arrested in different localities, and brought to Brla. Capistrano set in judgment upon them, and hurried them to execution. At the Saldring Mobile Hercules here Capistrano resided, 41 convicted Jews were burnt on one day 2 June, 1453. The Rabbi Phineas hanged himself. He had also counseled others to take their own lives. The remainder will vanish from Bilal, all their children under 7 years of age having previously been taken from them by force, baptized, and given to Christians to be brought up. This was Capistrano's wish, and in a learned treatise he explained to King Ladislaus that it was in consonance with the Christian religion and orthodoxy. The honest town clerk, Eschenloer, who did not venture to protest aloud against these barbarities, wrote in his diary, "Whether this is godly or not, I leave to the judgment of the ministers of religion." The ministers of religion had transformed themselves into savages. The goods of the burnt and banished Jews were, of course, seized, and with their proceeds the Glenavine church was built. It was not the only church erected with bloody money. In the remaining Silesian towns the Jews fared no better. Some were burnt, and the rest chased away to strict homelessness. Under one king, Ladislaus, was petitioned by the Bilal town council to decree that from that time forward no Jew would be allowed to settle in Bilal. Not only did he assent for the glory of God and the honor of the Christian faith, but he added, in approval of the outrages committed, that they the Silesian Jews here suffered according to 263 their deserts, a remark worthy of the son of Albert II, who had burnt the Austrian Jews. The same monarch also sanctioned altars at the instigation of Capistrano, who passed several months advocating the expulsion of the Jews from the latter place and from Biran. The echoes of Capistrano's venomous eloquence reached even Poland, disturbing the Jewish communities there from the tranquility they had enjoyed for centuries. Poland had long been a refuge for hunted and persecuted Jews. Exiles from Germany, Austria, and Hungary found a ready welcome among the Jews. Privileges generously granted by Duke Ulster, and renewed and confirmed by King Casimir II, were still in force. The Jews were, in fact, even more indispensable in that country than in other parts of Christian Europe. For in Poland there were only two classes, nobles and serfs, and the Jews supplied the place of the middle class, providing merchandise and money, and bringing the dead capital of the country into circulation. During a visit which Casimir IV paid to Poland shortly after the decision, fire broke out in the city from the sea. It was totally destroyed. In this time of British, the original government had privileges and preventing the loss of these records, so according to them, and praying that everyone might be prepared according to existing laws, and all the rights Casimir did not require much persuasion. In order that they might live in security and content under his time reign, he granted them privileges such as 1487. This king was in no respect a slave of the church. Either the king was misled by a false copy of the original charters, or he desired to avail himself of the opportunity of enlarging their scope without carrying too many fresh concessions. At all events, privileges afforded under the new statute were, in many respects, more considerable than those formerly enjoyed by Jews. Not alone did it have unrestricted freedom as installed within the very extensive kingdom of Poland, but now laws often laid down by coast, and only recently reenacted by the Church Council of Basel. Casimir's charter mentioned that Jews and Christians might live together, and in all respects enjoy freedom. It emphatically decreed that no Christian could summon a Jew before him, and that if a Jew was so summoned, he need not appear. The Palatines in their several provinces were enjoined to see that the Jews were not molested by the clergy, and generally to extend an honorable protection. Furthermore, no Jew might be accused of using Christian blood in cast service or as a sacred post. Jews being innocent of such offenses, which are repudiated by the Roman.
Oh, good.
And then the accused was suffered for his pride, and his privileges were not to be dragged into it. In the event, however, of a Christian accused was not being in a position to substantiate his right by the Testament, he was to be punished with death. This was a shown after Roman colony was training masses of Jews. Casimir II also recognized the judicial authority of the Jewish community. In criminal cases between Jews, or
Sort of go back. I'm so mad.
or his representative, Mrs. Jews, was a Jew. In common law suit, this was just as the Jewish elders rabbis, who were permitted to put the fine 6 months in these to keep the authority of the Jewish board within reasonable bounds, Casimir's charter enacted that the banish should be pronounced on Jew only with concurrence of the entire community. Truly, in no part of Christian Europe were the Jews possessed such important privileges. They were renewed and issued by the king of the ascendant Polish Magnates. Also the Carpathian kings of Turkey, Lutz, etc., received from Casimir renewal and confirmation of privileges granted them by the Lithuanian Jews foretold in the 13th century. The clergy looked jealous eyes on the species of Jews, and zealously worked with the Jews being chosen to friendly act. The men of the Polish Jews were the closest to Jews speaking in English and part of the Tago, speaking of West Niki. The protection afforded the Jews emphasized by the king was to the source of Capistrano entered Krakow in triumph, and was received by the king and the clergy like a divine deity. During the rule of his May 1454, aided by Bishop Bignor, he stirred up King Casimir against the Hussites and the Jews. He publicly remonstrated with them on the subject, threatening them with hellfire and unsuspected Jews wore with such an order of knights, if he did not abolish the privileges enjoyed by Jews, 266 and abandoned the Hussite heretics to the church. It was easy to predict defeat at the hands of the Prussian knights, seeing that the whole of the Polish church was secretly assisting them against Casimir. Therefore, when the Moitani knights, in aid of their Prussian allies, took the field against Poland, and the Polish army, with King Casimir at its head, was as an industry put to twice its return, 1454, the game of the Cleric party was won. They spread the rumor that the disastrous Poland was a consequence of King's favorite Jews and heretics. To agree responded, and to take vigorous Casimir needed the assistance of Bishop Bignor, and the latter was in a position to make his own terms. The Jews were sacrificed, the king was compelled to give them up. In November 1454, Casimir revoked all privileges he had granted to Jews, on the ground that the Miguels may not enjoy preference over the worship of Christ, and servants may not be better treated than sons. By public requires the was almost made known throughout the land. Besides, Casimir ruled that the Jews of Poland were a special class to distinguish them from Christians. Capistrano was victorious all along the line. Further, the Jews were raised even in the
This guy. Chino bangs, you can't hit nothing. It looks cool though. Yo, look at that, wow. That's pretty. But it's slow. You just walk out from under it. Step right back. Can you hit anybody with that? It's too long and drawn out drama. But it looks cool. Keep on emptying your magazine over here. That way you won't hit my friends. Oh, Lord. I do not want to get hit by that. It looks like it would hurt. Or it would take my hit points away. And quick. Consisting of Menachem Shayasi, his son Moses Shayasi, Menachem Harley, Michael the Old, his son Joseph, and a few others, had come in the lights necessary for the Sabbath to be prepared on Friday. The college gave adequate reasons for the innovation. According to a Harvey principle, not only an ecclesiastic authority, but an individual is justified in abolishing an ancient custom, or amending one or two 70 decisions, if he can cite sufficient evidence for it. Nevertheless, strong opposition arose about 1460 against this decision, aimed at Alexander derived, perhaps, from Henry, the founder of Heresy, and hence possessing the state of Wittenberg by the rest of 7th century. Skipping and fiction were the result. The section of community which entered to prepare lights for the Sabbath was abused and charged with heresy. Moreover, the schism relating to the commencement of festivals was still unequal. The Palestinian Harley communities and their neighbors continued to distinguish between the earlier by speech of the barley harvest and to their festivals. Nothing.
Thank you. There's live and learn, and there's also die and learn. Come here. Come here to me. Put some. I need to talk to you, buddy. Come on. Ooh, you are annoyance. Come on, man. What you doing? Bacon Baron. I'm gonna be Baron your bacon. I just did.
How sadly their strength departed. They are driven hither and hither, and they are pursued even unto death. The sword of the extended hangs over their heads. They are with the flowing rivers of loss. Brothers and teachers, friends and acquaintances. I, Isaac Zarfaudi, from a French stock, born in Germany, where I sit at the feet of my teacher, I proclaim to you that Turkey is a land wherein nothing is lacking. If ye will, all shall yet be well with you. The way to the Holy Land lies open to you through Turkey. Is it not better for 273 you to live under Muslims than under Christians? Here every man may dwell at peace under his own vine and his own fig tree. In Christendom, on the contrary, ye dare not clothe your children in red or in blue, according to your taste, without exposing them to insult and yourselves to extortion. And, therefore, are ye condemned to go about meanly clad in sad-colored raiment. All your days are full of sorrow, even your Sabbaths and the times appointed for feasting. Strangers enjoy your goods. And, therefore, of what profit is the wealth of your rich men? They hoard it but to their own sorrow, and in a day it is lost to them forever. Ye call yourselves your own loss. They fall to your oppressors. They bring false accusations against you. They respect neither age nor wisdom. And, though they gave you a pledge sealed 60 gold, yet would they break it. They continually lay double punishments upon you, a death of torment and confiscation of goods. They forbid teaching in your schools. They break in upon you during your hours on prayer. And they forbid you to work or conduct your business on Christian feast days. And now, seeing all these things, O Israel, wherefore sleepest thou? Arise, and leave this accursed land forever.
How in the
Isaac's Zarfaud's appeal induced many Jews to emigrate forthwith to Turkey and Palestine.
oh well.
Their brave demeanor, extreme piety, and peculiar apparel at once distinguished them from the Jews of Greece and the Orient, and Aragon the Newfoundlands exercised considerable influence upon the other inhabitants of the countries in which they settled. There were peculiar circumstances connected with the prohibition of the emigration of Jews to Palestine. The Jewish inhabitants of Jerusalem had obtained permission from a pasha to build a synagogue on one of the slopes of Mount Zion 274. The site of the synagogue adjoined a piece of land owned by consisting monks, and the rather containing the ruins of one of their chapel, known as David's Chapel. When this permission was given to the Jews, the monks raised as much clamor as the law Palestine, including the Holy City, had been their peculiar inheritance since the beginning of time. They forthwith carried their complaints to the Pope, and represented that, if the Jews were
Missile
permitted to take
rack.
such liberties as this,
100,000 damage. Okay, that's what's
the
going.
Holy Sepulchre itself. The Pope at once issued a bull directing that no Christian shipowner should convey Jewish immigrants to the Holy Land. As the Levantine trade was at that time almost entirely
Somebody
in the
need to
hands of the
take
nations,
him out.
the Pope was prevailed upon to issue stringent orders to all the shipmasters of the mainland and the islands not to give passage to Palestine
Oh.
to Jews. It is, indeed, seems that, while the Christian powers were under the impression that they had come to be children of Israel on all sides like hunted animals, the Turks of Eastern Europe opened a way of escape to them. Ere another half-century had passed, their Spanish brethren, savagely hunted from the peninsula, were destined to seek the same asylum. It must, however, be admitted that under the sway of the Castilian king, Henry IV, and that of John II, of Aragon, the condition of the Spanish Jews was one of comparative peace and comfort. But it was the calm that went before the storm. The doubly envied king was gentle to a degree pervading ruler of men. Although, as a Blante, Don Henry had allowed himself to be persuaded by his partisans to replenish his exhausted coffers by plundering the houses, not only of the Jews, but also of the new Christians or converts from Judaism, he had no personal confidence in the son of the people of Israel. A Jewish physician was his confidential minister. Not long after his accession to the throne, he had even sent him to the Portuguese court on the most delicate mission of obtaining the hand of the young, beautiful
Give me a
princess of Portugal
lot.
for his sovereign. He was upon his mission to a successful conclusion, but was assassinated in the hour of his success. In spite of the
Good.
political and repeated ordinances of the cities, Don Henry employed a Jewish farmer of Texas, one Don Shannon, a native of Peoria. And he, too, fell a sacrifice to his office. A rabbi, Jacob Ibn Nefis, his private physician, was appointed by Henry to portion and collect the tribute of the Jews of Castile. While Abraham Bibago, yet another Jew of eminence, stood high in the favor of John II of Aragon. The example of the courts naturally affected the greater nobles, who, when their own interests were not concerned, troubled themselves very little about ecclesiastical edicts. The practice of medicine was still apparently in the hands of Jews, and open to them the cabinets of the hearts of kings and nobles. It was in vain that peoples proclaimed that Christians should not employ Jewish physicians. There were few or no Christians who understood the healing art, and the sick had no recourse save to the skill of the Jews. Even the higher clergy had but little regard for bulls of Eugenius, Nicholas, and Callistus. They were too much for the health of the flesh to receive the already though the Jews responded to the canonical decree. Most of the tyrannical restrictions belonging to the minority of John II and the times of the regent Catalina were completely forgotten. Only on one point did Henry insist with rigor. He would not permit the Jews to clothe themselves luxuriously. This was partly on account of his own preference for simplicity of dress, partly because he was 276 desirous that the enemy of Christians should not be excited against them. Under the model of the Jews spent the lower lessons that slowly baptized him returned to their faith, where it observed the Jewish ritual and ritual. During the peace of the Passover, the conquest entirely better, on the one hand, to take the heavy penalty, and, on the other, to burned most fiercely in the great towns, naturally made it impossible for the Orthodox to behold without indignation this favoritism towards the supposed enemies of their faith, and they made use of a weapon whose accuracy had been proved ineffective. The Jews had put Christian children to death. Then came that a Jew in the neighborhood of Salamanca had torn a child's heart out. Or, Jews elsewhere had cut pieces of flesh out of a living Christian child, and so on. By means of such rumors, the magistrates took the matter, and the accused Jews were thrown into prison. The king, whether they were indulged from these accusations, had been thoroughly secret. The result of the innocence of the accused was completely
Cool.
established. Notwithstanding this
Man,
fact,
this is some
the
tough
Jews
one.
maintained their guilt. Some insinuated that the judges had been wrong, while others asserted that the new Christians had exerted themselves in behalf of their kinsmen, and that the king himself was partial to them. Among all their enemies, the man who raged most bitterly and fiercely against the Spanish Jews was a preacher in Salamanca, Alfonso Despina, a Franciscan monk, of the same order and opinions as Capistrano. Instead of the venom tongue, he used the poison pen against them. This man enjoyed a certain 277 amount of fame, because he happened to have accompanied Alvaro de Luna, the once all-powerful minister of John VII, to the scaffold as his confessor. This bigoted priest thundered unceasingly from the altar steps against the Jews and their leaders, and essentially against the Jews as secret guilt to their former faith. Disputing to help the the same issue, in 1460, a Peru in directed against Jews, Muslims, and other heretics, under the title Correligion Bible. In this book he collected everything that the enemies of the Jews had ever written or said against them. He reproduced every absurd legend and idle tale that he could procure, and seasoned the whole collection with every device of rhetoric that his malice could suggest. In his opinion, it was only right and natural that all Muslims and heretics should be exterminated root and branch. Against the Jews, he proposed to employ currently lenient measures. He would simply take their younger children from them, and bring them up as Christians, an idea for which he was indebted to the philosopher Duns and his fellow Franciscan, Capistrano. Despina thus deeply deplored that the various laws for the persecution of Jews, promulgated during the minority of John VII, were no longer in force under his successor. In most stringent words he rebuked the king, the nobles and the clergy for the favor that they showed to Jews. And, in order to inflame the mob, he untiringly retailed all the old fables of child murder, death of the host, and the like, in the most circumstantial narrative, and insinuated that the partiality of the king permitted these abominable crimes to go unpunished. The fanaticism aroused by Alfonso Despina was by no means without effect. Indeed, the most lamentable consequences ere long resulted from it. A monk, crucifix in hand, proposed a general massacre 278 of the Jews of Medina del Campo, near Valladolid, and his words were favorably received. The inhabitants of the town fell upon the Jews, and burned several of them alive with the sacred books which they happened to find in their possession. Murder was naturally followed by plunder of the victims' goods. The king had the ringleaders of this outrage punished. But this was not the victim. He was unable to the recurrence of such scenes. He had been compelled to recognize the object position of the Jews officially in the statute book which his advisors, his secret enemies, Don Pacheco, Marcus of Villena, and the Count of Valencia, prepared at his request. Don Pacheco, who by his intrigues brought both king and country to confusion, was himself of Jewish blood, his mother, who had married a Spanish noble, being the daughter of a Jew named Louis Caplan. Notwithstanding this fact, he included the most odious enactments in Don Henry's revised statute book. All the earlier disabilities were revived, the exclusion of Jews from all offices, even from practice as apothecaries, wearing of distinctive badges, restriction to the juries of towns, and even confinement to their houses during Holy Week. The civil war fueled by the intrigues of Don Pacheco and other courtiers gave a robust deposition of Don Henry the coronation of his younger brother, Alfonso, and more heavily on the Jews and the general population of Castile. In 1467, Alfonso's party had by treason become master of Segovia, and immediately applied against the Jews began to the enemies of this unhappy people's brotherhood, on the suggestion of their rabbi, Solomon Pico, the Jews of the little community of Segovia, not far from Segovia, were during Holy Weeks of cruelly tortured a Christian child that had died upon the cross April, 1468. On 279 March, the Bishop of Arthurus, of Avila, of Jewish race, several Jews 8 to 16, according to different accounts, whom the popular voice had accused, were hauled from Segovia to Segovia, and there condemned to the stake, in the gallows and the bowstring, whereupon the Christians of Segovia fell upon the few remaining Jews of the community, massacred some, and hunted the rest from the neighborhood. Is it not strange that in Castile and in Sevilla, in Italy and in Poland, the self-same accusations were raised, and followed by the same sentences? Scarcely was Alfonso's party exalted by the death of its corpus king before another sprang up, which was to defend the rights of the Infanta Isabella, sister of John Henry. The utter weakness which Henry betrayed encouraged the rebels to make the most outrageous assaults upon his regard purpose. The courts convened at Ocaña in 1469, which was to him, took up the Jewish question. They reminded him of the laws of his ancestors, and told him to state that he had violated these laws by endowing Jews with the chief offices in the collection of royal revenues. They further asserted that, owing to this distinguished example, even princes of the church had farmed out the revenues of their dioceses to Jews and Muslims, and that the townsfolk had actually levied their contributions in the churches. In conclusion, he insisted that the edicts be once more stringently enforced, and that heavy penalties be imposed for their transgression. The finances of this monarch, who, in consequence of his liberality and the expense of putting down the ever-returning revolts against the authority, was in constant need of money, would have been in a sorry condition had he entrusted them to Christian tax dollars. The latter bid only a small amount to the privilege. Moreover, they might have made too weighty use of the rebellious factions to rid themselves of their obligations. A king who said to his treasurer, give to these that they may serve me, and to those that they may not rob me. Yes, and I am king, and have treasures and revenues for all purposes such a king could not dispense with Jewish financiers. Thus there existed, in Castile, an antagonism between the edicts against the Jews and the interests of the state. And this antagonism roused the mob, inspired alike by ecclesiastical fanaticism and envious greed against their Jewish fellow townsmen, to the perpetration of bloody outrages. The fury of the Orthodox was also excited against the new Christians, or Moranos, because, happier than their former fellow neighbors, they were promoted to the highest offices in the state by reason of their superior talents. The marriage of the Infanta Isabella with Don Ferdinand, Infante of Aragon, in October 1469, marked a triumphal crisis in the history of the Spanish Jews. Without the knowledge of her royal brother, Angela embraced the faith, and she had solemnly promised to marry only the since who had already advised of her intriguing friends, and had been of Aragon, who, both English and in Spanish history, under the title of the Catholic, has left some cursed memory behind him. Don Abraham Sr. had promoted this marriage, hoping by it to increase the welfare of his brethren. Many new complications arose in Castile out of this union. Isabella's partisans, anticipating that under her rule and that of her husband the persecution of the Jews would be made legal, took it from Valladolid, Isabella's capital, and fell upon the New Christians September 1470. Then in 281 him to protect them. The king did, indeed, collect troops, and march against the rebellious city, but he had been grateful that he himself was well received by the citizens, and could not think of punishing even the ringleaders. 2 years later the New Christians underwent a persecution, which surely must have caused them to repent having taken shelter at the foot of the cross. The religious populace blamed the Moranos, not altogether without reason, for confessing Christianity with no less while in their souls they despised it. It was said that they either did not bring their children to be baptized, or if they were baptized, took them back to their houses and washed the stain of baptism off their foreheads. They used no lard at their tables, only oil. They abstained from pork, celebrated the Jewish Passover, and contributed oil for the use of synagogues. They were further said to have put small respect for cloisters, and were supposed to have broken sacred relics and devout nuns. The New Christians were, in fact, looked upon as a cunning and ambitious set of people, who sought eagerly for the most profitable offices, not only of accumulating riches, and avoided hard work. They were believed to consider themselves as living in Spain as Israel did in Egypt, and to hold it to be quite permissible to plunder and outwit the Orthodox. These accusations were not by any means merited by the New Christians as a body, but they served to inflame the mob, and caused it to hate the converts even more bitterly than the Jews themselves. The outbreak above referred to arose as follows. A certain princess was going through the streets of Cordova with a picture of the Virgin under canopy, and a girl, either by accident or design, poured some water out of a window on the canopy. The consequence was a frenzy rising against the converted Jews. An excited Smith incited 282 the Christian mob to avenge the insult of the holy picture. It was said that the girl had poured something unclean upon it, and in an instant her father's house was in flames. The nobles sought to defend the Moranos, and in the skirmish, the Smith was killed. This so enraged the already furious mob that the men at arms were forced to retire. The houses of the New Christians were now broken into, plundered, and then reduced to ashes. While those who had not been able to save themselves by flight were massacred in the most barbarous manner March 14th to 15th, 1472. The fugitives were hunted like wild beasts in the chase. Wherever they were seen, the most horrible death inevitably awaited them. Even the peasant at work in the field struck them down without ado. The slaughter which thus began at Cordova spread rapidly from town to town. Those of the Cordovan fugitives who had found a temporary refuge in Palma lost no time in seeking a stronghold to afford them protection from the tempest of persecution. One of their company, held in the highest respect both by his fellow sufferers and the governor, the Aguilar, went to Seville to seek an interview with the Duke of Medina Sidonia, lieutenant governor of the province. He asked for the fortress of Gibraltar as a city of refuge for himself and his brethren, under their own command. In return, he promised to pay a considerable yearly tribute. The Duke had signified his consent to this proposition, and the New Christians had bedded themselves to Seville to sign the contract, when the friends of the Duke took alarm. They believed that the Moranos were not to be trusted, and expressed the fear that they might enter into an alliance with the Moors, and deliver the key of the Spanish coast into their hands. The Duke, however, insisted upon completing the contract, whereupon the opponents of the scheme gave the signal to the mob of Seville, 283, which instantly rose against the New Christians in an outburst of fanatical frenzy. It was with difficulty that the governor protected them. They were forced to return to the city of Palma, overlaid by country people, and ill-treated and plundered 1473. Thus the plan of Pedro de Herrera and his friends served only to bring greater misery upon them, endangering the whole body of New Christians as well as the Jews themselves. As early as this, the idea took shape in both the converted and the unbaptized Jews to leave the known hospitable things and emigrate to Flanders or Italy. The taxes on the New Christians were now so great that they just took an ambitious minister, Cheng, James of the very other thing the ministry of the Lord. 2 decades had kept Castile in constant see the chagrin that the reconciliation of Don Henry with his sister and successor gave there to completely annul his influence. To break off new complications he determined to take possession of the city of Samaria, unoccupied by the king. With this end in view, he instigated, through his dependents, another assault upon the baptized Jews, during the confusion at which his accomplices were to seize Cabrera, the governor of the castle, and, if possible, the king himself. The conspiracy was betrayed only a few hours before it was to be carried into action. But the attack upon the New Christians was perpetrated. Armed perambulated the streets of Seville, broke into the houses of the Moranos, and slew every man, woman, and child that fell into their hands, May 1474. Around these was maintained in the death of Don Henry in the following December. The rulers of the United Kingdoms 284 of Aragon and Castile now were his sister, the bigoted Isabella, who was led by Vices Sponsor of the Jews, and Ferdinand, her unscrupulous husband, who pretended to be President of House. Sad and terrible was the fate and tornado of the sons of Judah throughout the land and left the peninsula. 205. Chapter 9. The Jews in Italy and Germany before the expulsion from Spain. Position of the Jews of Italy. Jewish bankers Agile of peace-sized relations with John Isaac of Jewish physicians. Guglielmo di Portini in the Bible regarding among Italian Jews as Ryan Elias del Medigo Eco di Marzola, the disciple of Medigo by election of Christians of the Catalog of Shannon and religious views of Del Medigo Ermin rabbis in great into Iliosa Colon. His character and dispute with Messer Leon Udamens and antagonist of Del Medigo Bernardinus of Filter used banished from Trent on a false charge of child murder. Doge Venice and Pope Sixtus. 1474 to 1492 CE. The Spanish Jews would have belied their native penetration and the wisdom born of bitter experience had they not foreseen that their position would ere long become unbearable. Because they did foresee it, they turned their gaze towards those countries whose inhabitants were most favorably disposed towards Jews. Italy and the Byzantine Empire, just rested from the cross, were now countries of greatest toleration. In Italy, where men saw most clearly the infamy of the papacy and the priesthood, and where they had most to suffer from their selfishness, the church and her servants were utterly without influence over the people. The worldwide commerce of the wealthy and flourishing republics of Venice, Florence, Genoa, and Pisa had in a measure broken through the narrow bounds of superstition, and enlarged men's reign. The interests of the marketplace and the interests of the church into the background. Wealth and ability were valued even in 286 those who did not repeat the Catholic confession of faith. Not only the merchants, but also the most important princes were in need of gold to support the mercenary legions of their condottieri and their daily feuds. The Jews, as capitalists and skillful diplomatists, were, therefore, well received in Italy. This is proved by the fact that when the city of Ravenna was desirous of uniting itself to Venice, it included among the conditions of union the demand that wealthy Jews be sent to it to open credit banks and thus relieve the poverty of the populace. Jewish capitalists received, either from the reigning princes or the senates, in many Italian cities, extensive privileges, permitting them to open banks, establish themselves as brokers, and even charge a high rate of interest 20%. The Archbishop of Mantua in 1476 declared in the name of the Pope that the Jews were permitted to lend money upon interest. The canonical prohibition of usury could not withstand the pressure of public convenience. The Jewish penal regulations also tended to guard the bankers from illegal competition, and rabbis threatened with the ban all those who in the community who lent money on interest without proper authorization. A Jew of Pisa, named Hitchil, controlled the money markets of Tuscany. He was, by no means, a mere heartless moneymaker, as the Christians were wont to call him, but rather a man of noble mind and tender heart, ever ready to assist the poor with his gold, and to comfort the unfortunate by word and deed. Hitchil of Pisa was also familiar with and deeply interested in Hebrew literature, and maintained friendly relations with Isaac of Ravenel, the last of the Jewish statesmen of the peninsula. When Alfonso V of Portugal took the African seaboard towns of Arsenal and Tangier, and carried off Jews of both sexes and every age captive, the Portuguese community became inspired with a pious 287 desire to ransom them. Ravenel placed himself at the head of a committee to collect money for this purpose. As the Portuguese Jews were not able to support the ransomed prisoners until they found means of subsistence, Ravenel, in a letter to Hitchil of Pisa, begged him to make a collection there. This petition was favorable. The Jews of Italy were found to be desirous citizens, not only for their financial gain, but also for their as physicians. In the letter to Hitchil, Ravenel asked whether there were Jewish physicians in the Italian states, and whether the princes of the church employed them. Physicians, he said, possessed the key to the hearts of the great, upon whom the fate of the Jews depends. The celebrated Jewish doctor, Guglielmo Benjamin D. Bertalian, of Mantua, first was physician ordinary to Governor of Naples, Leonardo Tito. He next entered the service of Benito Sforza, of Milan, and in 1479 became valued physician to the Legion of the Doctor. He was the founder of a noble house and a long-time skillful Italian physician. Therein arose an intimate relation between Jews and Christians in Italy. For the wealthy Giuliano, of Prima and the marriage of his son, arranged magnificent festivities which lasted 8 days. A great number of Christians took part, dancing and enjoying themselves to the intense displeasure of the clergy. Totally forgotten scene the in which Nicholas V had quite recently forgiven under heavy penalties all intercourse of Christians with Jews, as well as the employment of Jewish physicians. In place of the canonically prescribed livery of degradation, the Jewish doctors wore robes of honor like Christians of similar standing. While the Jews connected with the church were quoted Jews and other offerings of the contrast between the condition of Jews in Italy and that of their brethren in other lands is not illustrated to be by two similar incidents, occurring simultaneously in Italy and Germany, but differing greatly in their issues. The mother of a family in Crete, in consequence of differences with her husband, had given notice of a desire to be received into a Catholic area, and was facing a non-Christian as prepared for life. Bishop Safer, with other spiritual advisors, was earnestly occupied with the salvation of her soul, when she was suddenly seized with remorse. The Bishop of Pavia, far from punishing her for this relapse, or seeking to appease her desire, interceded for her with her husband. He advised him to take her out of the convent forthwith, and testified most favorably as to her behavior, so that her husband, descendant of the family therein, might not be obliged, under the Jewish law, to pay her. In the same year, a spiteful fellow in Radisson, Kalman, a Prasenna Chazen, took a fancy to turn Christian. He frequented the convent, attended church, and at length the bishop received him in his house, and instructed him in the Christian religion. To curry favor with the Christians, he condemned his fellow believers by asserting that they possessed blasphemous writings against Christianity. Kalman also came to the step he had taken. During the absence of the bishop, left his house, and returned to the Jews. The clergy of Radisson were infuriated against him, arraigned him before the Inquisition, and charged him with having sought to blaspheme the Church, God, and the Blessed Virgin. He was specially charged with having said that, if baptized, he would remain a Christian only till
Can I
he
get some heels?
On the strength of this, he was condemned, and put to death by drowning. Wherever even a
What
little
is
indulgence
wrong
was
with
granted
you?
the Jews, their dormant energy revived. And the 289 Italian Jews were
Like,
used to
can you
display
get out of my
knowledge.
way?
They had gained a certain degree of culture in the days of Emmanuel and Leone Romano. They took
Well,
an active
thank
part in
you.
the intellectual revival and scientific advancement which distinguished the times of the Medici.
Sacagawea,
Jewish youths attended the Italian universities, and acquired the liberal education.
Maximus
The Italian Jews were the
Ross.
first to make use of the new discovery of the and Christian houses soon rose to new possibility and red light.
Alright, Vesuvius.
And creations of the time. However, in painting and sculpture, the Jews had no share. These lay outside their sphere. But several educated Jews did not little for the advancement and spread of science in Italy. Two deserve a special mention, Messer Leon and Elias del Medico, the latter of whom not only received the light of science, but also shed it abroad. Messer Leon, or, by his Hebrew name, Jew of Bendichil, of Naples, flourished between 1450 and 1490, and was both rabbi and physician in Antioch. In addition to being thoroughly versed in Hebrew literature, he was a finished Latin scholar, and had a keen appreciation of the subtleties of Cicero's and Quintilian's style. Belonging to the Aristotelian school, he expounded several of the writings of the philosopher so highly esteemed in synagogue and church, and wrote a number of books in the Hebrew language, and Jewish students. One of these writings is his Hebrew letter NFZP, in which he lays down the laws upon which the great scholars and others such scholars died. Same laws are like sacred books.
New Ethio magazine. Oh.
Reference that a comparison with profane pagan literature must have seen a species of blasphemy. Of course, this was possible only in the times of the Medici, when love for Greek and Latin antiquities rose to positive enthusiasm. Messer Leon, the learned rabbi of Mantua, was liberal in all respects. He was never weary of rebuking the polytheists for striving to withhold foreign influences from Judaism, as though it could be broken by them. He was rather of opinion that Judaism could only gain by comparisons with the folk of the ancient classical literatures, since their knowledge, beauty, and sublimity would be brought to light. Elias Delgado, or Elias Cohen, 1898, the son of a German family that had emigrated to Crete, is a striking figure in later Jewish history. He was the first great man produced by Italian Judaism. His was a mind that shone clearly and clearly out of the clouds which obscured his age. The mind of a man of varied and profound knowledge, and of both classical and philosophical culture. So completely had he assimilated the Latin literary style that he was able, not only to issue works in that language, but also to present Hebrew syntax under Latin analogies. Medigo kept aloof from the vacuity of Italian sciolists, who were under the spell of the newly discovered Neoplatonic philosophy introduced by Ficinus. He gave allegiance to those sound thinkers, Aristotle, Maimonides, and Averroes, whose systems he made known to Christian inquirers in Italy, by tongue and pen, through the medium of translations and in independent works. That youthful prodigy of his time, Count Giovanni Pico di Mirandola, made the acquaintance of Medigo, and became his disciple, friend and protector. Mirandola, who was a marvel by reason of his wonderful memory, wide erudition, and dialectic skill, was, moreover, 200 years on friendly terms of the ruling house of the Medicis in Tuscany, learned from his Jewish friend the Hebrew language, and the Arabic development of the Aristotelian philosophy, but he might also have learned various of thought from him. On one occasion a quarrel on a learned subject broke out in the University of Padua. The professors and students were divided into two parties, and, according to Christian custom, were on the point of settling the question with rapier and knife. The university, acting with the Phoenician Senate, which was desirous of ending the dispute, called upon Elias Delgado to act as umpire. Everyone confidently expected a final settlement from the erudition and officiality. Delgado argued out the theme, and by the weight of his decision brought the matter to a satisfactory conclusion. The result was that he became a public lecturer on philosophy, and discussed to large audiences in Pavia and Florence. The spectacle was, indeed, notable. Under the very eyes of the community, ever striving for the humiliation and enslavement of the Jews, the students were invited based on motives of a Jewish teacher. Against the protectors of Jews and Satan held the thunders of excommunication, while in the religious schools the favors constantly showered upon the Jews by Christians. Pico di Mirandola, a scholar rather than a thinker, took a fancy to plunge into the abysses of the world. And he turned into the catalyst of the Jews, Johann Aalman, who had emigrated from Constantinople to Italy. Aalman, himself a confused thinker, made him believe that the secret doctrine was of ancient origin, and contained the wisdom of the ages. Mirandola, who had a marvelous faculty of assimilation, soon familiarized himself with the Kabbalistic form and discovered confirmations of Christian dogma in them. In fact, he too 92 found far more of Christianity than of Judaism. The extravagances of the Kabbalah demonstrated in his eyes the doctrines of the Trinity, the Incarnation, original sin, the fall of the angels, purgatory, and eternal punishment. He lost no time in translating several Kabbalistic writings from Hebrew into Latin in order to bring this occult lore to the knowledge of Christian readers. Among the 900 points which Pico, at the age of 24, pledged himself to defend OHNT, invited all the learned of the world to Rome, and undertook to pay the cost of their journeys as this. No science affords more certain most prerogative cost than merit. Even though 6 historic your practice means so strongly attracted to Kabbalah that he was able to procure Latin translations of Kabbalistic writings for the benefit of the community. It is a striking proof of the sober-minded and healthy judgment that Elias Delgado kept himself aloof from all this nebulous and childish confusing and the student of the He had profound contempt for the Kabbalistic phantom, and did not hesitate to expose its worthlessness. He had the courage openly to express his opinion that the Kabbalah is rooted in an intellectual swamp, that no trace of this doctrine is to be found in the Talmud, that the recognized authorities of ancient Judaism knew nothing of it, and that its supposed to be the groundwork, Zohar, was by no means the work of the celebrated Simon Bar Yasha but the production of a forgery. In short, he considered the Kabbalah to be made up of the runs and tatters of the Neoplatonic school. Delgado had, in fact, very sound and healthy views on religion. Although a warm adherent of Judaism, entertained respect also for its Talmudic element, he was yet far from listening and accepting as truth all that appears in the Talmud. When requested 293 by one of his Jewish disciples, Solomon Ashkenazi, of Candia, to give his confession of Jewish faith, especially his views on the signs which distinguish a true religion, Elias Francis issued a small but pregnant work, The Investigation of Religion by Daf, which gives a deep insight into his methods of thought. Candia maintained that Delgado suggested novel trains of thought in his work. In general, the Italians were not hesitant to endow Judaism with new ideas. Moreover, the outline of Stanford was a great rival of the Bible, and the name was expected. New practice. He must be credited, too, with having recognized as deformities, and with desiring to remove, the additions to Judaism by Kabbalists and pseudo-philosophers. Unfortunately, the rabbis who emigrated from Germany to Italy assumed an attitude distinctly hostile to philosophical investigation and its promoters, Elias Delgado and Nestor Young, with their honest, but one-sided, exaggerated piety. They cast a gloomy shadow wherever their hard fate had scattered them. Fresh storms breaking over the German communities had driven many German Jews, the most unhappy of their race, into Transalpine lands. Under Emperor Frederick III, who for half a century had with astounding equanimity beheld most shameless insults to his authority on the part of an ambitious nobility, under his hierarchy, the demoralized clergy, and the self-seeking patricians of the small towns, the Jewish communities but too often saw their cup of bitterness overflow. Frederick himself was by no means hostile to them. On the contrary, he frequently issued decrees in their favor. Unhappily, his command remained for the most part tender, and his laxity of Rule 294 encouraged the evil-minded to the commission of their most shameful misdeeds. It was dangerous for the German Jews to go beyond the orders. Every man was careful, and every one dissatisfied with things that was everything that broke out into became German Empire by the from names were found Talmudic scholars. They discussed, finding Judah and most men. Former as a result of extortion or oppression, many rabbis were emigrating from all parts of Germany, and on account of their superior Talmudic knowledge, these German immigrants were elected to the most
Pretty good.
They realized their prejudice and error darkness of vision the Italian Jews, who were making determined efforts to free themselves
Well,
from the
maybe
bars of
not
the
so
Middle
good.
Ages. The most distinguished rabbis of Italy were at that time Judah Mencken and Joseph Cohen, and precisely these two were most inimical to any liberal manifestation within Judaism, and most strenuously opposed to the advocates of freedom. Joseph Ben Solomon Cohen flourished 1460 to 1490, was of French extraction, his ancestors having been expelled from France. But he passed his youth in Germany, and belonged to the German school. He subsequently lived with his relatives in Chambéry until the Jews were hunted out as a boy. With many companions in misfortune he went to Lombardy, where he gained his living by teaching. Finally he became rabbi of Mantua. Endowed with extraordinary penetration, and fully the equal of the German rabbis in the depth of his Talmudic learning, Joseph Cohen was celebrated in his day as a rabbinical authority of the first magnitude, and 295 his academy rivaled the German school itself. He was consulted by both German and Italian communities. On scientific subjects and all matters outside the Talmud he was as ignorant as his German fellow dignitaries. A resolute, decided nature, Joseph Cohen was a man of rigid views on all religious matters. His ruggedness involved him in unpleasant relations with Moses Kapsali in Constantinople, and in a heated controversy with the cultured Messer Leon in his own community. However well they might agree for a time, Joseph Cohen, the strict Talmudist, and Messer Leon, the cultured man of letters, could not long tolerate each other.
Really?
When the conflict between them broke out, the whole community of Mantua took sides in their feud, and split into two parties as supporters of the one or the other. The strife at length became so keen that in 1476-1477 Duke Joseph of Mantua banished them both from the city. After which Cohen became rabbi of Pavia. Still more strained were the relations between the Rabbi Judah Mims and the philosopher Elias Del Medigo. The former, born 1408, died 1509, a man of the old school, of comprehensive
Wow,
knowledge of Talmudic
I don't know
subjects,
what that
and of remarkable
was.
sagacity, was
Well,
most
just
resolute in
stream while I was
scientific progress
choking.
and freedom in religious matters, and after his expulsion from Mainz transplanted the narrow spirit of the German rabbis to Pavia and Italy in general.
Hope that
The
wasn't
relatively secure and honorable position of the Jews in Italy did not fail to rouse the displeasure of
Ice
fanatical
cream.
monks, who sought to cover with the cloak of religious zeal either their dissolute conduct or
Sweet.
their ambitious share in worldly affairs. The colder the Christian world grew towards the end of the 15th century with regard to clerical
You get so
institutions, the
far
more freely did the monastic
overextended.
orders rage against the
Oh, yeah.
Jews. Preaching fires made the chancels ring with tirades against them, and openly advocated 296 their utter extermination. Their most desperate enemy at this time was the consistent Bernardinus of Filter, a worthy disciple of the bloodthirsty Capistrano. The standing text of his sermons was, "Let Christian parents keep a watchful eye on their children lest the Jews steal, ill-treat, or crucify them." He held that Capistrano, the Jew slayer, as the type and model of a true Christian. In his eyes friendly and neighborly intercourse with the Jews was an abomination, a most grievous sin against canonical law. Christian charity, he admitted, threats the Jews, being human, be treated with justice and humanity. But at the same time the canonical law forbids Christians to have any dealings with them, to sit at their tables, or to allow themselves to be treated by Jewish physicians. As the aristocracy of Italy, in obedience to their own interests, took the part of the Jews, Bernardinus inflamed the lower classes against the Jews and their patrons. Because certain Jewish capitalists had been successful, he depicted all Jews as vampires and extortioners, and roused the ill will of the populace against them. I, who live on alms and eat the bread of the poor, shall I be a dumb dog and not howl when I see the Jews wringing their wealth from Christian poverty? Yea. Shall I not cry aloud for Christ's sake? Such is a fair specimen of his preaching. Had the Italian people not been actuated by strong good sense, Bernardinus would have become for the Jews of Italy what, in the beginning of the same century, the Dominican, Vincent Ferrer, had been to the Jews of Spain, and Capistrano, to the community of Germany and Florence. And the early story in Bernardinus and the business of Judea, and his bloodthirsty sermons mostly failed of effect. When he was conducting his crusade of Bergamo into Chigi, Duke Polizzo, 297 of Milan, forbade him to proceed. In Florence, in fact having been contested, the enlightened prince and the senate took the part of the Jews with vigor. The venomous monks spread the report that they had allowed themselves to be bribed with large sums by Achille of Pisa and other wealthy Jews. As Bernardinus was inciting the youth of the city against the Jews, and the popular rising was imminent, the authorities ordered him to quit Florence and the country forthwith, and he was compelled to submit 1487. Little by little, however, by dint of untiring repetition of the same charges, he managed so far to inflame public opinion against the Jews that even the Venetian Senate was not always able to protect them. Finally, he succeeded in bringing about bloody persecution of the Jews, not, indeed, in Italy, but in Tyrol, whence it spread to Germany. While Bernardinus was preaching in the city of Trent, they remarked with no little chagrin the friendly relation between Jews and Christians. Tabanis, a skillful Jewish physician, and an intelligent Jewess, named Brunetta, were on most friendly terms with the upper classes, enjoying their complete confidence. This roused desire not a little, and he made the chancels of Trent ring with savage raids against the Jews. Some Christians opposed him to account for his hatred of Jews, remarking that their little profit trade those of Trent were worthy of God. He knew not what misfortune he really over in poverty. Before each descendant passed their daily food of their extraordinary goodness. It was easy for him to prophesy, for he and a few other priests had arranged a cunning plan, which not only brought about the ruin of the community of Trent, but also caused the greatest injury to the Jews in other countries. Chance aided him by creating a favorable opportunity. 298 inches Holy Week of 1475, a 3-year-old child, named Simon, the son of poor Christian parents, was drowned in the Indulge, and the corpse was cast in a grading close to the house of his Jew. In order to anticipate misrepresentation of the event, he hurried Bishop Hinderhoff to give him notice of the occurrence. The bishop took 2 men of high position with him, went to the place, and had the body carried into the church. As soon as the news spread, Bernardinus and other hostile priests raised a fierce outcry against the Jews, saying that they had tortured and slain the child, and then thrown it into the water. The body of the supposititiously ill-treated child was exhibited, in order to inflame the fury of the populace against them. The bishop had all the Jews in Trent, and Rome, cast into prison, and swore a single against them, and called the bishop, Matthias Tiberius, to testify to the violent death of the child. Radisson, and Engrosso, came forward with the most fearful accusation against his former co-religionists. His charges the more readily found credence as the imprisoned Jews confessed under torture that they had slain Simon, and drunk his blood on the night of the Passover. Granetta was said to have supplied the weapons for the purpose. The letter also was said to have been found in the possession of a rabbi, Moses, which had been sent from Saxony, asking for Christian blood for the next Passover. Only one of the church entities, a man named Moses, endured every torment without conferring underlying activation of the events. The result was that all the Jews at Trent were burnt, and it was resolved that no Jew should thenceforth settle in the city. 4 Christians only became converts to Christianity, and were pardoned. The Bishop of Trent, Bernardinus, and the monks of all orders made every effort to utilize this occurrence for the general ruin of the Jews. The corpse 299 of the child was embalmed, and commended to the populace as a holy relic. Thousands made pilgrimages to its remains, and ere long it was believed by the faith-drunken pilgrims that they had seen a halo about the remains of the child Simon. So much was said about it that even its inventors came to believe in the martyrdom. From every chancel the Dominicans proclaimed the new world, and thundered against the infamy of the Jews. 2 orders from Padua visited Trent in order to convince themselves that the truth of the occurrence were almost torn to pieces by a fanatical mob. It was imperative that the martyr be believed in, and so the Jews of all Christian countries were jeopardized anew. Even in Italy they dared not go outside the towns lest they be slain as child murderers. The Doge, Pietro Mocenigo, and the Venetian Senate, on the complaint of the Jews about the insecurity of their lives and property, issued orders to the Podesta of Padua energetically to defend them against fanatical outbreaks, and to forbid the preaching fires to inflame the mob against them. The Doge accompanied the orders with the remark that the rumor that Jews had slain a Christian child in Padua was device invented by their enemies for some purpose. When Pope Sixtus IV was urged to canonize little Simon, he steadfastly refused, and sent a letter to all the towns of Italy, on October 10, 1475, forbidding Simon of Trent to be honored as a saint until he could investigate the matter, and thus he allayed popular excitement against the Jews. The clergy, nevertheless, permitted the bones of Simon to be held sacred, and instituted pilgrimages to the church built for his remains. Through this circumstance, Jew hatred in Germany gained fresh vigor. The citizens of Frankfurt on the Main exhibited, on the bridge leading to Sachsenhausen, a picture representing in hideous detail a 300 tortured child, and the Jews lead with the devil in their bloody work. The news of the child murder in Trent spread like wildfire through the Christian countries, and became the source of new sufferings to Jews. Nowhere were these sufferings so severe as in the free city of Ratisbon, containing one of the oldest Jewish communities in South Germany. It was held to be not only very pious but of distinguished morality, and it was considered a high honor to intermarry with the Jews of Ratisbon. Within the memory of man, no native Jew had been brought before the tribunal for any moral louse. The community was regarded as the most learned in the land, and the parent of all German communities. It possessed chartered liberties, which the emperors, in consideration of the crown tax, were accustomed to renew on their accession. The Jews of Ratisbon were half recognized as burghers, and mounted guard with the Christians as militia. One might almost say that the Bavarian princes and corporations vied with each other in favoring them, of course, merely to share their purses. In the latter half of this century they had become a veritable bone of contention between the Duke of Bavaria Landsberg and Frederick III, who, hard-pressed on all sides, not only in the empire, but even in his own possessions, hoped to fill his empty coffers with the wealth of the Jews. In addition to these, the Bavaria family made claims upon the Jews of Ratisbon, as well as the town council, and, of course, the bishop. These contradictory and mutually hostile claims made the position of the Jews anything but fair and ruthless. First from one side and then from another came orders to the council to imprison the Jews, their chiefs, or their rabbi, and at times sorely tried Israel Bruna, until, worn out by confinement, they decided to pay the visit. The council would indeed seek to show that the only sin on the member of the guild running as a threat to the citizens, or Jew would not compete with the Christian guild members. To escape these cruel and arbitrary extortions, prudence directed that they place themselves under the protection of one of the Hussite nobles and captains. They would thus enjoy more security than was possible under the so-called protection of the emperor, since the fiery Hussites were not a little feared by the more sluggish Germans. Although they had to some extent abandoned their heretical fanaticism, and had taken service under the Catholic sovereigns, their desperate valor was still a source of terror to the Orthodox clergy. The event proved that the Jews had acted wisely in appealing to their protection. A bishop named Henry was elected in Ratisbon, a man of gloomy nature, to whom the sentiment of mercy was unknown, and he naturally insisted on the enforcement of the canonical restrictions against the Jews. As examples to others, for instance, he mercilessly punished a Christian girl who had entered the service of a Jew, and a Christian barber who had led blood for a Jewish man. His animosity was contagious. On one occasion, when the Jewish midwife was sick, and a Christian was interested in some Jewish women, the council actually dared not give her the required permission without the episcopal sanction. Bishop Henry of Duke Louis, one of their hatred of Jews, now pursued what seemed to be a preconcerted plan to the conversion of the Jews of Ratisbon. On the one hand, they obtained the evidence of proof, and on the other, the assistance of influential persons on the city council. Their campaign began with attempts at conversions and false accusations, for which they availed themselves of the assistance of a couple of worthless converted Jews. One of these, Peter Schwartz by name, rode Flanders and the Duke of Conference 302 against the fellow religious. One Hans Hale, heaped the vilest calumnies upon the aged rabbi, Israel Bruna, amongst other things charging him with purchasing from him a 7-year-old Christian child and slaughtering it, and the rabbi of Ratisbon, already bowed down by sorrow and suffering, was charged with the death of the child. Israel Bruna of Viorel, born 1400, died 1480, was one of those sons of sorrow who seemed to fall from one misfortune into another. He appears to have been exiled from Viorel, where he was recognized as a rabbinic authority, and after many wanderings, he set up there, and wished to become conscious of the spiritual officialism, took the part of the persecuted Israel Bruna, with whom David Spence, a rabbi of Nuremberg, also took sides. These men proved in a correct manner that any Jew is competent to assume rabbinical functions, provided he possesses the requisite knowledge, is authorized by a recognized teacher, and leads a pious and moral life. They further added in favor of Israel Bruna the fact that he contributed his vote to the community of Frederick, and was therefore a worthy member of the community. The breach nevertheless remained open, and Israel Bruna was often exposed to insults from the opposite 303 clauses. Once when he was about to hold a discourse, several of the ringleaders left the lecture room, and were followed by many others. Disciples of his opponents secretly paid crosses on his seat in the synagogue, where the people were careful that he cures the soul, and offered utterance in sin. As time went on, after the death of the great Orthodox, Jacob loved Israel, Bruna decide to assist. The emperor thereupon threw Israel Bruna into prison to force him to threaten his people with a ban if they did not pay over the third part of their possessions. He was released only on bail of his entire property. And, in addition, the fearful charges of child murder and other crimes he declared the man by the converted Hans Baal. Bishop Henry and the clergy were only too ready to gratify their hatred of Jews by means of this accusation, and the decided populace gave all the more credence to the falsehood, as rumors of the death of Christian children at the hands of Jews daily increased. No one in Ratisbon doubted that grey old Israel Bruna had foully murdered a Christian child, and he was on the point of being put to death on the demand of the clergy. To withdraw him from the fury of the mob, the council, which feared to be made answerable, imprisoned him. In the meantime, the anxious community appealed, not only to the emperor, but also to the Bohemian king, Ladislaus, more feared than the emperor. An ere-long stringent directions came from both to release the rabbi instantly without ransom. The council, however, himself on the field appealed for the bishop and the mob. Thereupon followed a mandate from the emperor to defer the execution of Israel Bruna until he came to die at Antioch. The council was still less satisfied with this order, for it feared to lose its jurisdiction over the Jews. Bruna had to take decisive action in the matter. The accuser, Hans Baal, was led on the stone bridge, where the executioner stood in readiness. He was informed that he must die, and was admonished not to go into eternity with a lie on his lips. The hardened sinner maintained his accusation against the Jews in general, but confessed that the rabbi, Israel Bruna, was innocent of the charge of child murder, and on receipt of another rescript from the emperor, Baal was banished, and the rabbi released from prison. He was, however, compelled to take an oath that he would not revenge himself for his long sufferings. This poor, feeble grey-beard, could he have avenged himself? At this juncture, the news of the martyrdom of Simon of Trent reached Ratisbon, and added fuel to the fire. Bishop Henry was delighted to have an opportunity of persecuting the Jews with impunity in the interest of the faith. He had heard something of this child murder on his journey to Rome. On his return, he urged the council to institute a written inquiry respecting the Jews of Jerusalem. The result of the extorted confessions was the imprisonment of the whole community. Sentinels stood on guard day and night at the gates of the Jews and permitted no one to enter or go out. The possessions of the whole community were confiscated by the commissioners and judges who took an inventory of everything. The horrible fate threatened the unhappy children of Israel. This trial, which caused considerable attention in its day, proved quite as prejudicial to the citizens as to the Jews themselves. Immediately after the February 305 began, several Jews of Ratisbon had given themselves to Bohemia and to the emperor, and tried by every means to save their unhappy brethren. They knew that to claim the righteous cause gold, and plenty of it, would be above all things necessary. For this reason, several Bavarian rabbis assembled in a synod at Nuremberg, and decided that the Bavarian communities and every individual not absolutely impoverished should contribute a quota to make up the amount necessary to free the accused Jews of Ratisbon. When the safety of their brethren was in question, the Jews, however fond they might be of money, were by no means parsimonious. The intercession of the Bohemian nobles under whose protection several of the Ratisbon community had placed themselves led to no result. Far more efficacious were the golden arguments which the ambassadors of the community laid before Emperor Frederick and his advisors. It is only just to say that this usually feeble sovereign displayed considerable ability and firmness in this inquiry. He was so strongly convinced of the falsehood of his love accusation against the Jews that he would not allow himself to be deceived by any trickery. He dispatched rescript after rescript to the Council of Ratisbon, ordering the immediate release of the imprisoned Jews, the cessation of the durance of the community, and the restoration of their property. The council, through fear of the bishop and the duke, delayed the execution of the order, and the emperor became furious at the obstinacy of the citizens when news was brought to him that, in spite of the imperial command, they had already executed some of the Jews. He thereupon declared the city to have fallen under the ban of the empire on account of its obstinate disobedience, and summoned it to answer for its contumacy. At the same time, he sent the imperial chancellor to deprive the city of penal jurisdiction and to threaten it with other severe penalties. 306 Frederick, as a rule weak, showed surprising firmness on this occasion. New and shameless charges were nevertheless brought by the clergy against the Jews. In Versailles, they were accused of having bought consecrated wafers from a Christian, and profaned them. Whereupon certain marvels were said to have occurred. For this the bishop of Versailles had a great number of Jews put to death, some mercifully by the sword, others at the stake, and others by means of red-hot pincers. In memory of this inhumanity and to the glory of God, a new church was built near the scene of the atrocities. A Jew and the Jews of Ratisbon were accused of complicity in this crime, and thrown into prison with the others. All the details were brought to the notice of the emperor in order to rouse his anger. He, however, maintained his conviction that the Jews of Ratisbon were innocent, and issued an order to the effect that those in prison on the charge of profaning the host were neither to be tortured nor put to death, but to be treated like other prisoners. In vain the council sent deputy after deputy to the imperial court. Frederick roundly declared, "In justice and honor I neither can nor will permit these Jews to be slain, and the men of Ratisbon who have so long hardened themselves in their disobedience shall certainly not sit in judgment upon them." Thus, after long resistance, the council was compelled to kiss the rod, and give a written promise to release the imprisoned Jews, and not to drive any out of the city on account of this trial. Further, the city was sentenced to pay a fine of 8,000 gulden into the imperial exchequer and to fine Balin 10,000 gulden, which latter burden, strangely enough, the Jews had to bear. An appeal to the Pope was out of the question, since experience had taught that the papal court was even more greedy of gold than the imperial. 307 When the community of Ratisbon was informed of this conclusion of the affair, and of the conditions under which it could gain its freedom by paying not only the sum imposed upon itself, but also the fine of the city and the costs of the proceedings, T refused. The delegates said that the total exceeded the possessions of the Jews, as they had been deprived, for 3 long years, of freedom and of opportunity of earning money. They preferred their present miserable state to becoming beggars. So they remained 2 years longer in durance, partly on account of lack of money, and partly by reason of the excessive bail demanded. They were finally set at liberty on taking an oath that they would not take revenge, nor convey their persons or their goods out of the city of Ratisbon. All the Jews living in Swabia were expelled, doubtless in consequence of false accusations in connection with the child murder of Trent. As late as in the 18th century, the shameless falsehood was repeated, and in many parts entailed upon the Jews the sacrifice of life and property. 308. Chapter 10 The Inquisition in Spain. Jewish blood in the veins of the Spanish nobility he Moranos cling to Judaism and manifest unconquerable antipathy to Christianity. Ferdinand and Isabella G. Dominicans, Alfonso de Ojeda, Diego de Merlo, and Pedro de Solis. He Catechism of the Moranos polemical work against the Catholic Church and despotism gives a powerful impulse to the Inquisition. The tribunal was established in 1488. El Murillo and Juan de San Martin are the first inquisitors. The Inquisition in Seville, the Edict of Grace, he procession and the auto da fe numbers of the accused and condemned Sixtus IV and his vacillating policy with regard to the Inquisition. The Inquisition under the first Inquisitor General, Thomas de Torquemada. Its constitutions. He Moranos of Aragon are charged with the death of the Inquisitor, abuse, persecutions, and victims. Proceedings against two bishops favorable to the Jews, de Avila and de Orenda. 1474 to 1483 CE. A Jewish poet called Saying the Hell of the Jews. And, in very deed, those foul fiends in monk's cowls, the inventors of the Holy Inquisition, made that lovely land an inferno. Every misery, every mortal pain, conceived only by the most extravagant imagination of poets. Every word that can thrill the heart of man to its lowest depths, these monsters in the garb of humility brought upon the Jews of the Iberian Peninsula. These Calvins also said, burn but their books. For therein lies their power. The Dominicans wished to destroy not only the bodies, but the very soul and spirit of the Jews. Yet they were not able to quench the life of Judaism. They only succeeded in transforming the Spanish paradise into one vast dungeon, in which the king himself was not free. The Inquisition, created by the begging friars, wounded the Jew deeply, yet not mortally. 309 whose wounds are now almost healed. But Spain suffers still, perhaps beyond hope of cure, from the wounds dealt by the Inquisition. Ferdinand the Catholic and Isabella the bigot, who, through the union of Aragon and Castile, laid the foundation for the greatness of Spain, prepared the way, at the same time, by the establishment of the Inquisition, for her decay and final ruin. The new Christians, who dwelt by hundreds and thousands throughout the kingdoms of Aragon and Castile, were so many thorns in monkish flesh. Many of them held high offices of state, and by means of their wealth wielded great and far-reaching influence. They were also raised many older. Indeed, there were few families of consequence who were not Jewish, but their base. They formed a third part of the townspeople, and were intelligent, industrious, and peaceful citizens. These Moranos, for the most part, had preserved their love for Judaism and their race in the depths of their hearts. As far as they could, they observed Jewish rites and customs, either from Pio Pat, even those who, upon those ones, were devoted to Judaism, were not necessarily hostile to Christianity, which they were compelled to confess to this. Although they did not have their children circumcised, they watched as immediately after baptism. They were, therefore, fighting with Pio Pat's orgy and his witches, or the apostate Paris. They took the apostate origin of their clergy, which has been accomplished with iron sword. They received the sacrament of baptism, and this method of their sins remained Christian faith, however equal and rationalization giving them liberty to return to Judaism, and, in any case, to emigrate, in order to avoid scandal. But the spiritual powers were three-tenfold of perversity. That which demands the freest exercise of the powers of the soul was to be brought about by brute force, to the greater glory of God. During the lifetime of John Henry IV, the clerical members of the courts of Medina del Campo had persistently advanced the proposal that a court of inquisition be instituted to bring weak, or suspected Christians to trial, and inflict severe punishment with confiscation of goods. Unfortunately for the clericals, the king was by no means zealous for the faith or fond of persecution. And so this decision of the courts, like many others, remained a dead letter. The Dominicans, however, promised themselves greater results under the new sovereign Julian Isabella, whose confessors had reduced her to spiritual slavery, and Don Ferdinand, who, by no means so superstitiously inclined, was quite ready to use religion as the cloak of his avarice. It is said that the confessor, Thomas de Torquemada, the incarnation of the hell-begotten Holy Inquisition, had extorted from the Infanta Isabella a vow that, when she came to the throne, she would devote herself to the extirpation of heresy, to the glory of God and the exaltation of the Catholic faith. She was now queen. Her throne was established. And her soul was sufficiently beclouded to believe that God had raised her solely to cleanse Spanish Christianity from the taint of Judaism. The prior of the Dominican monastery, Alfonso de Ojeda, who had the ear of the royal consorts, made fearful representations to them as to the offenses of the new Christians against the faith. Aided by two others of like mind, he strained every nerve to set the Inquisition in motion against the Moranos. And the papal nuncio in Spain, Niccolo Franco, supported the proposition of the monk for a tribunal to call them to account for their transgressions. Without further consideration, Don Ferdinand, seeing that his coffers would be filled with the 3/11th lender of the accused, gave his assent to the scheme. The more scrupulous queen hesitated, and the royal pair decided to appeal to the Pope for advice. The two Spanish ambassadors at the court of Rome, the brothers Francisco and Diego de Santillana, earnestly pressed the Pope and the College of Cardinals to grant the request of their sovereigns. Sixtus IV, from whom anything, good or bad, could be obtained for gold, immediately grasped the money-making aspect of the Holy Inquisition. In November 1478, he issued a bull empowering the sovereigns to appoint inquisitors from among the clergy, with full authority to sit in judgment on all heretics, apostates, and their patrons, according to the laws and customs of the ancient Inquisition, sentence them, and most important point of all, confiscate their goods. Isabella, who had been somewhat favorably influenced in behalf of the new Christians, was not inclined to adopt rigorous measures to begin with. At her direction, the Archbishop of Seville, Cardinal Mendoza, prepared a catechism in 1478 for the use of new Christians, and issued it to the clergy of his diocese, in order that they might instruct the Moranos in the articles, the sacraments, and the usages of the Christian religion. The authors of this measure displayed strange simplicity in believing that the baptized Jews would allow an antipathy, which every day found new incitement, to be appeased by the dry statements of a catechism. The Moranos naturally remained in what the Church considered their blindness. That is to say, in the purity of their monotheism and their adherence to their ancestral religion. It happened that a Jew or a new Christian grievously offended the sovereigns by the publication of a small work in which he exposed at once the idolatrous cult of the Church and the despotic character of the government. Hereupon the Queen Gretel became more and more inclined to assent to the proposals for the establishment of the bloody tribunal. The work made so strong an impression that the Queen's father confessor, in 1480, published a refutation by royal command. The attitude of the court became more and more hostile to new Christians, and when the commission appointed by the sovereigns to inquire into the improvement or obstinacy of the Moranos reported that they were irreclaimable, it was authorized to frame the statute for the new tribunal. The The commission was composed of the fanatical Dominican, Alfonso da Ojeda, and the two monks Neon-minded Order Edro de Solis and Diego de Merlo. Had demons of nethermost hell conspired to torment innocent men to the last verge of endurance and to make their lives one ceaseless martyrdom, they could not have devised more perfect means than those which the 3 monks employed against their victims. The statute was ratified by the sovereigns, and the tribunal of the Holy Inquisition was appointed on September 17, 1480. It was composed of men well fated to carry out the bloody decree, the Dominican Miguel Murillo, Inquisitor in the province of Bruxelles, and renowned as a converter of heretics by means of torture. Juan de San Martin, and assessor, the abbot Juan Ruz, and the procurator fiscal, Juan Lopez del Barco. These men were formally confirmed by Sixtus IV as judges in matters of faith, and of heretics and apostates. The tribunal was first organized for the city of Seville and its neighborhood, as this district stood immediately under royal jurisdiction, and, therefore, possessed no courts, and because it contained a great many Moranos. 3 weeks later the sovereigns issued a decree calling upon all officials to render the inquisitors every assistance in their power. It is noteworthy that as soon as the creation of 313 the tribunal became known, the populace everywhere looked upon it with displeasure, as though suspicious that it might be caught in the backspread of the Moranos. While the courts of Medina del Campo proposed the establishment of a court for new Christians, the Great Popular Assembly at Toledo in the same year first after the accession of Ferdinand and Isabella maintained absolute silence on the question, as though it desired to have no share in the unholy work. The mayor and other officials of Seville proved so disinclined to assist the inquisitors that it was necessary to issue a second royal decree on December 27, 1480, directing them to do so. The nobles, allied with the converted Jews either through blood or friendship, stood stoutly by them, and sought by every means to protect them against the new tribunal. As soon as the new Christians of Seville and the neighborhood received news of the establishment of the Inquisition, they held a meeting to consider means of turning aside the blow aimed at them. Several wealthy and respected men of Seville, Carmona and Etura, among them Abulafia, the financial agents of the royal couple, prepared to do battle with their persecutors. They distributed money and weapons among the people, to enable them to defend themselves. An old man urged the conspirators to arm resistance. But the conspiracy was betrayed by the daughter of one of its members, and all fell into the hands of the tribunal. Others, who had collected their possessions, and fled to the province of Medina Sidonia and Cadiz, under whose governors they hoped to receive protection against the threatened persecution, were deceived, for the Inquisition went to work with remorseless severity. As soon as it had taken up its quarters in the convent of St. Paul at Seville, on January 2, 1481, it issued an edict to the governor of Cadiz 314 and other officials to deliver up the Moranos and distrain their goods. Those who disobeyed were threatened not only with excommunication, but also with the punishment assigned, as sharers of their guilt, to all who showed sympathy to heretics, confiscation of goods and deprivation of office. The Inquisition inspired so much terror that the nobility lost no time in imprisoning those to whom they had lately promised protection, and in sending them in custody to Seville. The number of these prisoners was so great that the tribunal was soon obliged to seek another building for its functions. It selected a castle in Triana, a suburb of Seville. On the gates of this house of blood were inscribed, in mockery of the Jews, certain verses selected from their scriptures: Arise, God, judge thy cause. Catch ye foxes for us, which plainly showed the utter heartlessness of their judges. Fugitives when caught were treated as convicted heretics. So early as the 4th day after the installation of the tribunal, it held its first sitting. 6 Moranos who had either avowed their old religion before their judges, or made horrible confessions on the rack, were condemned and burned alive. The tale of victims grew to such proportions that the city authorities set apart a special place as a permanent execution ground, which subsequently became infamous as the Cudero, or place of burning. 4 huge caricatures of prophets distinguish this spot, existing to the present day to the shame of Spain and Christianity. For 300 years the smoke of the burnt offering of innocence ascended to heaven from this infernal spot. With that mildness of mien which skillfully covered the wisdom and the venom of the serpent, Miguel Murillo and his coadjutors gave to the new Christians guilty of relapse into Judaism a certain time in which to declare their remorse. Upon doing this they would receive absolution, and be permitted to 315 retain their property. This was the edict of grace. But it was not wanting in threats for those who should permit the time of respite to elapse, and be denounced by others as backsliders. The full vigor of the canonical laws against heresy and apostasy would then be exercised against them. The credulous and crowds obeyed the summons. Frightened they appeared before the tribunal, and their lawful guilt of their lapse into Judaism, and awaited absolution and permission to live in peace. But now the inquisitors imposed the condition that they declare by name, position, residence, and other particulars all persons of their acquaintance whom they knew to be apostates. This declaration they were to substantiate on oath. In the name of God they were asked to become accusers and betrayers and friend of his friend, the brother of his brother, and the son of his father. Terror, and the assurance that the betrayed should never know the names of their betrayers, loosed the tongues of the weak-hearted, and the tribunal soon had a long list of heretics upon whom to carry out its bloody work. Not only the hunted Moranos, every Spaniard was called upon by an edict of the inquisitors to become an informer. Under threat of excommunication everyone was bound to give, within 3 days, a list of acquaintances guilty of Jewish heresy. It was a summons to the most hateful vices of mankind to become allies of the court, to malice, hatred and revenge, to save themselves by treachery, to greed, to enrich itself, and to superstition, to gain salvation by betrayal. And what were the signs of this heresy and apostasy? The Inquisition had published a very complete, practical guide on the subject, so that each informer might find good grounds for his denunciation. The following signs of heresy were set forth: if baptized Jews cherished hopes of a Messiah; if they held Moses to be as efficacious for salvation as 316 Jesus; if they kept the Sabbath or a Jewish feast; if they had their children circumcised; if they observed the Jewish dietary laws; if they wore clean linen or better garments on the Sabbath, laid tablecloths, or lit no fire on this day, or if they went barefoot on the Day of Atonement, or asked pardon of each other; if a father laid his hands in blessing on his children without making the sign of the cross; if one said his prayers with face turned to the wall, or with motions of the head; or if he uttered a benediction berachah, berachah over the wine cup, and passed it to those seated at the table with him, he was to be deemed recalcitrant. As a matter of course, neglect of the usages of the church was the strongest ground for suspicion and accusation. Again, if a new Christian repeated a psalm without adding the Gloria, or if he ate meat on fast days, or if a Jewish woman did not go to church 40 days after the Mayan, or if parents gave their children Jewish names, the charge of heresy was held proved. Even the most innocent actions, if they happened to coincide with Jewish usages, were regarded as signs of aggravated heresy. If anyone, For instance, on the Jewish Feast of Tabernacles accepted gifts from the table of Jews, or sent them. Or if a newborn child was bathed in water in which gold coins and grains of corn had been placed. Or if a dying man in his last moments turned his face to the wall, such actions were held to be signs of heresy. By such means unscrupulous people were given ample opportunity for denunciation, and the tribunal was enabled to accuse of heresy the most orthodox proselytes when it desired to destroy their influence or confiscate their property. Naturally, the dungeons of the Inquisition were soon filled with Jewish heretics. Fully 15,000 were thrown into prison at the outset. The Christian priests of Moab inaugurated 317 the first Auto da Fé on January 6, 1481, with a solemn procession, repeated innumerable times during the following 300 years. The clergy in their gorgeous vestments and with crucifixes. The grantees in black robes with their banners and pennants. The unhappy victims in the hideous San Benito, short and flaming, painted with a red cross, and flames and figures of devils. The accompanying choir of a vast concourse the executioners with proud bearing and the victims in most miserable guise marched to the place of torment. Arrived there, the inquisitors recited their sentence on the victims. To the horror of the scene was added the ghastly mockery that the tribunal did not execute the sentence of death, but left it to the secular judge. For the church, though steeped to the lips in blood, was supposed not to desire the death of the sinner. The Jewish heretics were given to the flames forthwith, or, if candidate, they were first strangled. In the first Auto da Fé, at which the bishop, Alfonso da Ueda, preached the inauguration sermon, only 6 Judeans and Christians were burned. A few days later, the conspirators of Carmona, Seville, and other towns, and 3 of the most wealthy and respected of the Moranos, among whom was Diego de Susan, the possessor of 10 millions, and Abulafia, formerly a Talmudic scholar and a rabbi, were burned to death. On the 26th of March, 17 victims suffered death by fire on the Cordero. In the following month, a yet greater number were burned. And up to November of the same year, 298 burnt offerings to Christ gasped out their lives in flame and smoke at the single district of Seville. In the Archbishopric of Cadiz, no less than 2,000 Jewish heretics were burned alive in the course of that year, most of them being wealthy or well-to-do, their possessions, of course, going to the royal exchequer. Not even death afforded a safeguard against the fury of the Holy 318 office. These ghouls of religion tore from their graves the corpses of proselytes who had died in heresy, burned them, confiscated their possessions in the hands of barriers, and condemned the latter to obscurity and poverty that they might never aspire to any honorable office. Here was a splendid field for the avarice of the king. When it was impossible to convict a wealthy heir, it was only necessary to establish proofs of a relapse to Judaism against his dead father, and then the property fell partly to the king, partly to the Holy Inquisition. Many Moranos saved themselves by flight from the clutches of the merciless persecutors, and took refuge in the neighboring Muslim kingdom of Granada, in Portugal, Africa, Provence, or Italy. Those who reached Rome approached the papal court with bitter complaints about the savage and arbitrary proceedings of the Inquisition against themselves and their companions in misery. As the complainants did not come with empty hands, their cause usually obtained a ready hearing. On the 29th of January, 1482, the Pope addressed a severe letter to Ferdinand and Isabella, censoring the conduct of the Inquisition in no measured terms. He stated that he had been assured that the proceedings of the tribunal were contrary to all forms of justice, that many were unjustly imprisoned, and subjected to fearful tortures. Innocent people had been denounced as heretics, and their property taken from their heirs. In this letter, the Pope admitted that he had issued the bull for the institution of the Inquisition without due consideration. Sixtus Florus said, in strict justice, he ought to depose the inquisitors, de Murillo and San Martin. But out of consideration for their majesties, he would allow them to remain in possession of their offices, only so long, however, as no further complaints were made against them. Should protests again be raised, he would restore the inquisitorial 319 office to the bishops, to whom it properly belonged. The Pope refused the request of John Ferdinand to institute the provinces of the and extraordinary tribunals for the trial of heretics. But John Ferdinand also knew how to apply the golden key to the heretics, and obtained the establishment of the Inquisition in the provinces of Aragon. In this bull, dated February 11, 1482, Sixtus appointed 6 months Ambriarchs as chief inquisitors, among them Thomas Cecilia Mora, several of the millions of the world, not already inquisitors, others, he invested these men with discretionary powers, in virtue of which they were able to dispense with certain forms of common law, the hearing of witnesses and the admission of pleaders for the justice of law. Thus the first movement brought to the state. In the kingdom of Aragon, condemnation of Jewish heretics, raised such formidable opposition by Cardinal Huerta, afterwards the infamous Alexander VI, and the king himself petitioned the Pope for a modification of the conditions governing the practice of the tribunal. In a letter of the 10th of October, Sixtus excused himself from making any radical changes in consequence of the absence of the cardinals, who had fled from Rome in mortal fear of the plague. But he abrogated the conditions which too flagrantly violated the principles of common law. That is to say, he ordered that accuser and witnesses should be confronted with the accused, and that the process should be conducted in public. The Inquisition also met with great opposition in Sicily, and afterwards the kingdom of Aragon. The authorities took part in reforming new Christians, and shielded from the persecution of their brothers and sisters. Themselves openly charged that the victims were not executed out of zeal for the faith, but from insatiable greed which sought ceaseless confiscations. The bigoted Isabella was sorely troubled at having her pious desire to devote the proselytes to death thus evilly represented, and even the Pope believed that it would deep into the heart. February 1483. Sixtus IV had the greatest interest in maintaining friendly relations with the Spanish court, and, therefore, made no concession with regard to the Inquisition. As it often happened that Christian proselytes condemned by the tribunal, succeeded in escaping to Rome, which is absolution from the evil world, would be inclusion in the It's always saw that their efforts to purge Christian faith from the extermination of Jewish proselytes, especially by the confiscation of their goods, were most unpleasantly thwarted. The court, therefore, insisted that the Pope appoint a judge of appeals in Spain itself, so that the rulings of the Inquisition might not be reversed in foreign countries, thereby claiming that they were offenses might be brought to them. The Pope agreed to this proposition,
That's exhilarating.
At the request of the Spanish court, the Pope issued a bull decreeing that no bishop, vicar, or member of the upper clergy descended from a Jewish family, whether paternally or maternally, should sit as a judge in any court for the trial of candidates. From this prohibition there was only a step to the condemnation of clergy of Jewish blood to the state. Both his own frame of mind and his political position now inclined the Pope to encourage the sovereigns in the prosecution of their bloody work. He reminded them that Jesus had established his kingdom on earth solely by the extirpation of idolatry and the extermination of idolaters, and he pointed to the recent victories which the Spaniards had gained over the Muslims in Granada as the reward of heaven for their efforts towards the purification of the faith, that is to say, for the burning of new Christians and the confiscation of their goods. That His Holiness, Sixtus IV, not then infamous as a monster of depravity, sensuality, and unscrupulousness, who appointed boys that he had himself abused to bishoprics and cardinal dignity, and who bestowed no clerical office without payment as his contemporary, in Becerra, the Chancellor of Rome, has recorded his conduct with regard to the Holy Inquisition would have been sufficient to grant him within a short period he finished the most contradictory decisions, and did not take the trouble to veil his inconsistency with the most flimsy pretense. Scarcely had he proclaimed the utmost rigors against Judaism heretics, and cleared the tribunal of appeals, than he partly abrogated these bulls, and issued another 322 prescribing milder proceedings to the Inquisition, only to alter his policy in its turn. The hated Moranos, among them the high-spirited Juan de Seville, had exerted themselves to procure from the papal court a decree to the effect that those who had undergone private penance in Rome should not be submitted to the oppression and persecution of the avaricious king and his bloodthirsty inquisitors, but should be regarded and treated as Orthodox Christians. At first the Pope consented, and issued a bull on August 17, 1483, to be held in eternal remembrance and as guide for the future, in which he especially directed that rigor be tempered with mercy in dealing with the new Christians, seeing that the severity of the Inquisition had overstepped the bounds of justice. The bull enacted that all new Christians who had confessed their remorse to the confessor general in Rome, and had been assigned a penance, should not be pursued by the Inquisition, and should have their trials suppressed. It exhorted the king and queen, by the bowels of Jesus Christ, to remember that in mercy and kindness alone may man resemble God, and that, therefore, they might in this follow in the steps of Jesus, whose peculiar tribute it was to show mercy and to pardon. The permitted this bull to be copied indefinitely, each copy to have the authority of the original, in order that the papal attitude with regard to new Christians might be made universally known. Sixtus concluded with the statement that he issued this bull entirely of his own motion, not in obedience to external influence, although it was well known in high circles that it had been bought with new Christian gold. This had nothing to do with mercy or forbearance. They desired the death of the culprits and the possession of their property. Nor was the Pope really inclined to mild measures. A few days later, on August 13th, he recalled this 323 bull, excusing himself to the king for its tenor, and said that it had been issued with 2 days. Such was the consistency and infallibility of His Holiness, Pope Sixtus IV. Therefore, applied to the Portuguese Archbishop of Évora, who caused it to be copied by his notary and recognized as authentic. The Inquisition, however, was extremely suspicious of those who had sought and obtained indulgences in Rome, and Don Juan de Seville and his companions fell at length into his hands, and were severely punished. Terrible though the tribunal had hitherto been, though many thousands of compulsory proselytes and their descendants, during its 3 short years of resistance, had been cast into the flames, left to rot in its dungeons, driven from their country, or reduced to beggary, it was child's play compared with what it became when placed under the control of a priest whose heart was close to every sentiment of mercy, whose lips breathed only death and destruction, and who ignited the savagery of the hyena with the venom of the snake. Until now the Inquisition had been confined to southern Spain, to the districts of Seville and Cadiz, and the western province of Andalusia. In the remaining provinces of Spain it had hitherto been unable to get a foot, in consequence of the resistance offered to its introduction by the courts. Through the opposition of the people, the wicked will of the Inquisitors Murillo and Juan de San Martin had been gained in opportunity. They were appointed by the parents by new other difficulties. If there and American influence were held in the districts of Spain, they were isolated without organization, and purpose made to punish each other with victims. King Ferdinand thus had 324 not yet collected treasure enough, nor had the pious Isabella beheld a sufficient number of new Christians riding in the flames. For their joint satisfaction they now persuaded the Pope to represent the Inquisitor General Christian Constantine, and supervise the several wars, but none of his second Moranos might avoid their fate, and that the organization of the populace might be broken down by every species of tyranny. In cold blood, and with little interest even from the Pope himself, the Pope assented. And in May 1483, appointed Mendel, Thomas de Torquemada, to hire a monastery in Segovia, Inquisitor General of Spain. There are certain men who are the embodiment of good regal opinions and principles, and fully illustrate their extremist consequences. Torquemada was the incarnation of the Holy Inquisition with all its devilish malice, its heartless severity, its bloodthirsty ferocity. Out of Rome hath arisen a savage monster of such wondrous shape and hideous appearance that at the sound of its name all earth trembles. Its carcass is of iron, tempered in deadly poison, and covered with scales of impenetrable steel. 1,000 venom-dropping wings support it when it hovers over the terrified earth. Its nature is that of the ravening lion and the snake of the African desert. Its bite is more terrible than that of the hugest monster. The sound of its voice slays more speedily than the deadly glance of the basilisk. From its eyes and mouth stream fire and ceaseless lightnings. It feeds on human bodies, and its drink is human tears and blood. It excels evil in the speed of its flight, and where it broods its black shadow spreads the gloom of night. Where the sunshine never so clear, the darkness of Egypt follows in its form. Wheresoever it flies, every green meadow that it touches, every fruitful tree on which it sets foot, withers and dies. With its destroying 325 fangs it roots up every herb that grows, and with the poison of its breath it blasts the circle in which it moves to a desert like that of Syria, where no green bean grows, no grass blade sprouts. Thus did a Jewish poet, Samuel Usk, himself singed by its flames, depict the Inquisition.
Thank you,
Inscription version
Gregory.
Dante placed upon the portal of hell.
I'm interested to see if I can fit this guy, but
now establishing nearly all the great towns of Spain. Even once instituted 3 new tribunals in Cordova, King and Villarreal Ciudad Real, and, later on, one in Toledo, the capital of southern Spain. The offices of the Inquisition were entirely filled by him with hypocritical and fanatical Dominicans, whom he made the tools of his will, so that they worked like an organism with a single purpose, studying at his work to perpetrate the most hideous and imposure that cannibals might have envied. In those days Spain was filled with the putrefaction of the dungeon, the stench of corpses, and the crackling of the flames in which were burning innocent Jews, forced into a faith the falsity of which was demonstrated by every action of the servants of the church. A wail of misery piercing bone and marrow went through that lovely land. But their Catholic majesties paralyzed in the arm of every man prompted by mercy to put a stop to the butchery. At the court itself there sat a commission on the affairs of Jewish Christians, of which the Inquisitor General held the presidency. Don Ferdinand wished to perpetuate the jurisdiction of the Inquisition in his hereditary lands, in order to fill his purse with the spoils of the new Christians settled there. During the assembly of 326 the courts at Tarazona, in April 1484, he laid his plans before his privy council, and cancelled the ancient privileges of the country, which had existed from the earliest times, and which provided that no native of Aragon, whatever his crime, should suffer confiscation of his property. The Inquisitor General accordingly appointed for the Archbishopric of Saragossa 2 inquisitors who rivaled himself in bloodthirsty fanaticism, the canon, Pedro Arbiz de Pila, and the Dominican, Biscard Juggler. A royal ordinance was now issued to all officials and nobles, directing them to give every assistance to the inquisitors. The Grand
It's my
Decisionary
daughter.
Aragon, though it
Hey,
chose
sweetie.
other dignitaries, were marched to
Hey, Daddy's here. Daddy's gonna quit. Hey.
Tarquemada, the very soul of the Inquisition, now decided to publish a report for the guidance of the judges, so that the net might be drawn as closely as possible around his victims. The whole
Well,
body of inquisitors was assembled to consider this design, and, under the title of Carp,
well, don't want to let me go, do you? I'm trying to get out of this stupid cave. There we go. Yeah, don't try to hold me in there, man, when I got my daughter, needs me to kind of pay attention to her. Get that crap fixed. Excuse me. I'll be back.